Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Brooke Skylar Richardson. Carile, Ohio, is home to several families, including the Richardson family. This family consists of Kim and Scott Richardson, who are very involved in their children's lives. Their son, Jackson, loves playing football, while their daughter, Brooke Skylar, commonly known as Skyler, is a cheerleader. Skyler has struggled with an eating disorder since she was very young. Her mother, Kim, first noticed the problem when Skyler was in 6th grade at the age of 12. Skyler's hyperfocus on food and exercise became very apparent when she refused to buy gum because it had more than 5 calories. As a cheerleader, Skyler needs to be light and easy to throw. The pressure to maintain a certain weight makes her battle with weight loss even more difficult. She is constantly preoccupied with her body image and is afraid of gaining weight. Skyler's struggle with her weight and body image began due ring cheerleading practice. In an effort to maintain her weight, she started vomiting after meals. However, this behavior only worsened her problems once practice ended. After that, Skyler's struggle with her weight became more intense. She may experience periods of overeating in a short time, consuming more than her body needs. This is often accompanied by periods of starvation, during which Skyler restricts her food intake or follows a strict diet. Skyler's parents noticed changes in her behavior and became concerned about her health. They tried to express these concerns to her, but whenever the subject was brought up, Skyler became quiet. She did not want to talk about it and always refused any attempts to address her weight changes. Skyler's parents sought help from various professionals, including doctors and therapists, hoping that these interventions would help their daughter reduce her anxiety. After a clinical evaluation, Skyler was diagnosed with body dysmorphic disorder. This psychological condition causes individuals to focus excessively on a perceived flaw in their appearance, leading to impairment in daily functioning and distress. In July 2016, during her senior year of high school, Skyler began dating a friend's cousin. However, the relationship did not last, and by January 2017, Skyler had a new boyfriend, a high school student named Brandon. Skyler was in a good mood and appeared to have gained weight. Her parents, Kim and Scott, believed that their daughter's eating disorder had improved. They noticed that she looked healthy and genuinely happy. In February, Skyler chose a tight-fitting evening gown that required a tie. In mid-March, she went on vacation with her family. During the trip, she wore a 2-piece swimsuit, and her mother commented that she looked great. Kim believed that her daughter and Brandon were having sex, so she wanted Skyler to start taking birth control pills. She thought this would protect her daughter's health and prevent the risk of an unwanted pregnancy. In mid-April 2017, Skyler went to her mother's gynecologist to get a prescription for birth control pills while her mother, Kim, waited outside the clinic. After seeing the doctor, Skyler left the clinic with tears in her eyes. Kim immediately asked her daughter why she was so sad, and Skyler replied that it was a painful experience for her. Kim believed her daughter was telling the truth, unaware of the real reason behind the tears. During Skyler's visit to her OB/GYN, the doctor informed her that she was about 8 months pregnant. Skyler asked the doctor not to reveal this information to anyone, as she was not ready to share the news with her family. On May 5, 9 days later, Skyler and her boyfriend Brandon went to prom. Even though Skyler was in the final stages of her pregnancy, she still managed to fit into her prom dress. 2 weeks after Skyler attended the prom, on July 14, 2017, police officers arrived at her home to meet with her parents, Kim and Scott. The officers stated that they needed to talk to Skyler about an incident she may have witnessed and assured her that nothing was wrong. Scott decided to drive Skyler to the police station, where they wanted to question her about an emergency call the police had received from a fertility clinic. Specifically, the doctor had reported that a patient had just given birth and may have buried the baby in the yard. After receiving this notice, the police immediately arrested Skyler and took her to a room for questioning. They did not allow her father to participate in the questioning. Before the questioning began, the police explained her rights to her. The investigator then started asking questions about the phone call from the doctor's office. The caller informed the police that on April 26, a doctor had examined Skyler and concluded that she was pregnant. However, Skyler later revealed to the doctor that the baby was dead and that she had buried the baby in her backyard. During her interview with the police, Skyler recounted a tragic event from her past. On May 7, 2017, she said that she had given birth to a baby girl in the bathroom, but the baby was not breathing and had no heartbeat. Therefore, she decided to bury the baby alone and did not tell anyone about the incident. To do this, Skyler quietly went downstairs, took a garden shovel, and dug a shallow grave in her backyard, where she buried the baby. She then left a vase with flowers at the burial site to mark and remember her deceased child. During a conversation with her parents, Skyler announced that she had chosen the name Annabelle for the baby and revealed that the baby's father was the cousin of a close friend she had dated briefly before meeting Brandon. Crime scene investigators went to the Richardson home to search for the child's remains. They searched the backyard by pulling weeds and sweeping the ground. The police carried out this process meticulously and carefully, removing any debris that might hinder their investigation. After overcoming the difficulties caused by the overgrown vegetation, they were able to collect a significant amount of evidence. After removing the weeds and cleaning the area, the police found several human bones, including skull fragments. These bones were carefully collected and placed in small body bags to preserve the evidence. Investigators ensured that the bones were kept intact. Later, one investigator noted that the bones had a smell, while another had difficulty determining whether they were rocks or human bones due to their small size. At the same time, the coroner confirmed the discovery of hair and small fingernails, but no organs or items that could help identify. After more than 5 hours of questioning, Skyler and her parents were allowed to return home. However, just 6 days after the incident, Skyler was contacted by the police and told that she needed to come to the police station again. To reassure her father, Scott, the police assured her that she would not face any legal action. During Skyler's next meeting with the police, they informed her that they had received new information from the medical examiner's office. This information revealed a discrepancy between Skyler's original story and what the police had discovered. Specifically, the medical examiner had found that the baby's bones showed signs of being burned, based on an analysis of the remains. Skyler was confused by the news of the baby being burned. She claimed that she did not set the fire and denied harming her child. However, the police still wanted Skyler to admit that she had killed her daughter and then burned the body to hide the evidence. During the investigation, the police suggested that Skyler may have wanted to cremate the baby so that the ashes would not be scattered. However, this suggestion only made Skyler more confused, and she still insisted that she did not burn the baby. Skyler suddenly changed her story to the police, saying that she had a lighter and may have used it to try to burn the baby's remains. She also suggested that the baby may have been born alive and had been crying, even making gurgling or small noises at one point. Additionally, Skyler admitted that she had held the newborn too tightly, which may have led to the baby's death. During an hour-long interrogation, the police gathered enough evidence to arrest Skyler on a charge of reckless homicide. Law enforcement suspected that Skyler had caused the child's death by suffocation. After presenting her case to a grand jury, she was charged with aggravated murder, a crime that carries a life sentence in Ohio. Skyler pleaded not guilty to other charges, including involuntary manslaughter, abuse of a corpse, and child abuse. She spent several days in jail until her family was able to post $50,000 bail to secure her temporary release. Following her child's death, Skyler became the focus of media attention and was subjected to intense public scrutiny. This severely affected her family's daily life. They felt unsafe and were forced to retreat into their home to seek peace and quiet. The threats had disastrous consequences, making it even harder for them to step outside. People who saw them often took pictures, which added to their stress and put enormous pressure on them. The constant public scrutiny became unbearable and affected almost every aspect of their daily lives. Although Skyler's lawyer believes that she made a false confession and that her newborn baby's death was not intentional, the prosecution has not changed its position. Despite new evidence that contradicts their initial assessment, they continue to pursue the case. A key piece of evidence that the prosecution initially presented was the results of a medical expert's examination, which stated that the child's remains had been burned. However, after a thorough examination and additional information, the expert retracted his initial assessment. Following a detailed physical examination of the child, the expert concluded that there was no evidence of burning. The prosecution's approach remained unchanged despite the new information. They continued to focus on Skyler's confession that she had tried to burn the remains, but this contradicted the evidence and raised questions about whether their case was actually convincing. This shows that the state was convicting despite flaws in the evidence. Skyler's lawyers fought hard at trial to defend her against the charges. Thanks to the efforts of her family, Skyler was able to raise the $50,000 bail she needed to be released. However, her bail was conditional on her wearing an electronic monitoring bracelet that would track her whereabouts. Skyler has been largely confined to her home and has had limited public exposure. She feels isolated and prefers to spend most of her time with her family dogs. Over the past 12 months, Skyler's life has undergone major changes as her plans to attend the University of Cincinnati have been put on hold while she awaits trial for her child's murder. The charges were so serious that Skyler's attorney filed a motion to change the venue, but the court denied it. As a result, Skyler was forced to continue attending the trial in the original jurisdiction as planned. The stress and pressure of the trial weighed heavily on her life. Moreover, Skyler had to deal with the psychological and emotional trauma caused by the charges, along with social isolation. Spending time with her dogs brought her comfort and a sense of solace. They became her trusted companions and main support during the time she awaited the trial. At the same time, her family remained by her side, supporting and encouraging her through this difficult period. They expressed their belief in her innocence and hoped that the truth would soon be revealed. Despite the difficult challenges, Skyler persisted in fighting for her freedom. In July 2019, the state made a surprise offer to Skyler's defense attorney. Skyler would plead guilty to the remaining charges and serve a 15-year prison sentence. In exchange, the state would withdraw the felony murder charge. Skyler's parents were uncertain about the decision and debated whether she should accept the deal. After careful consideration, Skyler decided to decline the offer. Her parents were deeply troubled by her decision and wondered if their daughter had made the right choice. However, they understood that it was ultimately Skyler's choice, and they had to respect it. On September 3, 2019, Skyler went to trial for the murder of her newborn daughter. During the trial, the state presented preliminary evidence, including a series of text messages that Skyler had sent to her mother. In these messages, she expressed her happiness after giving birth. She also shared that she was very pleased because her belly had returned to its normal size, stating that she would not allow it to return to how it was before. Notably, this message was sent just hours after she gave birth. Skyler texted her mother, "I am really speechless because I am so happy. My belly is back." On the second day of the trial, the prosecution presented new information about Skyler. They stated that Skyler sent several text messages to her mother and boyfriend less than a day after she killed her baby. These messages indicated that Skyler seemed very happy about her baby's death. The prosecution argued that these messages were critical evidence suggesting Skyler's involvement in the baby's death. In one message, Skyler wrote to her mother that she was excited because dinner was coming up and she could wear a cute outfit. She mentioned that her belly had just returned to normal and wanted to take advantage of this time to make things great. However, this text message could be interpreted as an attempt to mask her feelings of guilt, while simultaneously being excited about no longer being pregnant. The state argued that Skyler's use of the word excited suggested she was genuinely happy that her baby had died. They also presented evidence of a text message that Skyler sent to her boyfriend in which she stated that although the night before had been the worst, she felt much lighter and happier the next morning. According to the state, this text message implies that Skyler felt unburdened by the death of her baby. The state's position is that Skyler did not want to have the baby. They acknowledged that they could not provide concrete evidence that the baby was born alive. However, they pointed out that Skyler had admitted in her police interview that she heard the baby gurgling and crying. The state alleged that Skyler had searched the internet for information about abortion. It was also alleged that Skyler's mother, Kim, warned her that she would lose everything if she became pregnant. This warning instilled great fear in Skyler, causing her to try to keep her pregnancy a secret. When she could no longer hide her condition, she decided to take Dr. measures. On the third day of Skyler's trial, the doctor who performed the autopsy on the baby testified. The autopsy revealed that the baby's cause of death was homicide. However, the doctor could not determine when the fractures in the baby's skull occurred, whether they happened before or after the baby died. In forming his opinion regarding the cause of the fractures, the doctor relied on Skyler's statements during the police interview. Skyler's defense attorney challenged the doctor's testimony, arguing that the doctor may have been biased in confirming the information. According to the attorney, the doctor had already formed an opinion and did not want to change it. During questioning, the doctor admitted that she had never examined the remains of the deceased child under a microscope. The defense attorney then asked the doctor if she had consulted with obstetricians. The doctor answered no. The attorney also asked if the doctor had seen photographs of the burial site or the backyard of Skyler's home. Again, the doctor replied no. Another doctor, specializing in fetal medicine, testified during the afternoon session of Skyler's trial, primarily when questioned by the prosecution. He stated that he suspected Skyler's baby was stillborn and added that she had only performed one screening. Knowing that the margin of error for fundal height measurements during the third trimester of pregnancy is 60%, he believed that Skyler could be carrying a healthy baby. He thought this was possible because Skyler had felt the baby move, and a dead baby would not normally move. He also questioned the report from the doctor who had provided information to the defense. The doctor had stated that Skyler's baby would likely have developmental problems. During cross-examination by the defense attorney, he asked the doctor if the prosecution had paid him. The doctor responded that he was paid $5,000 a day because that was the cost the hospital had to pay for another doctor when they were short-staffed. As the prosecution presented their case against Skyler, more shocking and heartbreaking evidence was introduced in court. The evidence that had the strongest impact on Skyler was the images of the deceased child's remains shown on the television screen. These images left a deep and lasting impression on Skyler, as was evident in her reaction during the trial. When the images of her child's remains appeared on the screen, Skyler initially tried not to look at them. Her remarkably calm demeanor at that moment was a stark contrast to the day before, when she had been visibly shaken for a moment before the judge began the jury selection process. When Skylar's defense attorneys presented their case, they argued that her life had been flawed and challenging even before she was charged with murder. They argued that much prosecution evidence presented a partial truth, with some documents was taken out. Skylar's defense attorney argued that her frequent texting was not evidence that she killed her daughter. Instead, the attorney wanted to highlight Skylar's mental health struggles, particularly an eating disorder that she had been battling since she was 12. This was supported by several pieces of evidence, including Skylar seeing a psychologist and nutritionist regularly for treatment of her eating disorder. To support their case, they presented the jury with photos of Skylar's changing appearance and weight over time. The photos included images of her looking very thin, as well as photos showing her looking slightly heavier. Her attorney stated that Skylar held the baby for hours while she bled on the bathroom floor. Despite her critical condition, Skylar remained committed to providing comfort and care for her baby after suffering unimaginable pain. Skylar's attorneys said she decided to bury the baby in her backyard. They explained to the court that Skylar had originally planned to tell her family about her impending pregnancy, but unfortunately did not have time to do so. Skylar's doctor informed her that she was due in 8 to 10 weeks. Therefore, Skylar thought she had enough time to attend prom and graduate from high school before talking to her mother. During the defense, an obstetrician testified that the baby had died before birth. The doctor argued that since Skylar did not admit to cutting the umbilical cord, it was possible that it had been severed before or during the baby's birth. The doctor also argued that Skylar's description of the baby's appearance was significant because she stated that the baby was white, suggesting that the baby may have died before birth. The obstetrician contended that a healthy newborn baby is not always pink. In fact, in his experience, newborns often have a purplish skin tone. Additionally, the doctor noted that Skylar had only gained 15 pounds during her pregnancy. He suggested that this limited weight gain could be a sign of an eating disorder, which might have restricted the baby's growth in the womb. The doctor's testimony aimed to question the accuracy of what Skylar told the police about the baby's health. Skylar's defense argued that she had only told the police what she wanted to say during questioning. They also claimed that she had not witnessed or participated in any harm to the child. Their goal was to cast doubt on the credibility of Skylar's testimony and suggest that other factors may have contributed to the child's death. Skyler Richardson's trial lasted a week, and the jury then reached its final verdict. The verdict came quickly, after just 4 hours of deliberation. They acquitted Skylar of aggravated murder, involuntary manslaughter, and child endangerment. However, Skylar was convicted of abuse of a corpse, a serious crime punishable by up to a year in prison. Skylar was held in custody until sentencing. During her sentencing hearing, she apologized for her actions and acknowledged the seriousness of the incident. The judge criticized Skylar or her role in the tragic death of her child. The judge was certain that if Skylar had made better decisions during her pregnancy, her child would still be alive. He severely criticized her actions and expressed disappointment that her choices led to serious consequences, including the death of her child. The judge also emphasized that Skylar's decisions were directly responsible for the child's death. The 3-year probation sentence for corpse abuse that the judge imposed on Skylar also served as a warning that her actions were morally unacceptable and against the law. In November 2020, another judge agreed to reduce Skylar's probation to 2 years early at the request of her attorney. During the hearing, Skylar expressed her desire to return to a normal life and asserted that she no longer needed supervision. Recognizing Skylar's progress, the judge decided not to allocate any more probation resources to her case. The judge made it clear that probation is not meant to be a punishment or a form of rehabilitation, but rather to give an individual the opportunity to prove why they should not face prison time. Since her acquittal, Skyler has made the most of this opportunity. She has successfully completed 2 semesters of college and works part-time at the law firm that represented her. Despite her acquittal, Skyler has faced many difficulties in finding a part-time job. She has often been denied job opportunities due to her criminal history. However, that has not stopped her from pursuing her career goals. She has expressed a desire to attend law school and become a defense attorney, hoping to use her knowledge to help others overcome similar hardships. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Elle Edwards. Elle Edwards, a 26-year-old woman, she was a vibrant and beautiful young woman who worked as a cosmetologist at a local beauty salon and assisted a dermatologist. Her positive attitude and kindness have helped her win the hearts and satisfaction of all her customers, even the most difficult ones. Edwards is a highly skilled beauty professional, known for being cheerful and always smiling. At the same time, she was determined and constantly working towards her goals and dreams. On December 24, 2022, her sister Lucy flew in from Dubai to spend the holidays with their family, and Edwards eagerly awaited her return. To celebrate this special occasion, Edwards, her sister, and their friends decided to go to the local pub in Liverpool's Wallasey Village, UK. Here they were having a fantastic time, laughing, dancing, and singing karaoke in a joyful atmosphere. Without their knowledge, someone with ill intentions was nearby. As they exited the pub at approximately 11:50 p.m., someone placed an emergency call. Shortly thereafter, a minimum of 12 shots were fired. Edwards was struck by 2 bullets, and she's suffering a severe head wound. The emergency services were immediately dispatched to the scene. They quickly loaded Edwards into an ambulance and rushed her to the local hospital. Unfortunately, she succumbed to her injuries en route, as they were fatal. When the police informed Edwards's family of the tragedy, they were shocked and disbelieving. No one could comprehend how this could have happened to Edwards, a beautiful and lively young woman. It was unthinkable that she could have had enemies who wished her harm. In the early stages of the investigation, detectives had no leads. The attacker launched a surprise assault and then quickly disappeared, leaving behind a single shell casing in the victim, who was severely bleeding at the location where the crime occurred. The assault was swift yet clearly premeditated, affording Edwards no opportunity for survival. However, it was unclear whether the attacker meant to target Edwards or if Edwards was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time and got hurt by someone who was mentally unstable. A car of unknown origin pulled up near the entrance of the pub, and shortly thereafter, gunfire erupted. Apart from the fatality, 4 other men sustained gunshot wounds of varying degrees. All of the victims were young adults, aged between 22 and 33. Police initially believed Edwards may have been a random victim of the attack. It was known that criminal gangs operated in the area and the shooting might have been a confrontation between gang members. However, this was just speculation that needed to be confirmed or ruled out during the investigation. To learn more, the detectives looked into Edwards's background. Like the witnesses, Edwards's relatives had no idea who would want she dead. The detectives planned to speak with more witnesses and those who had been shot at by the unknown criminal. They also asked the pub owner for security footage. The investigation involves conducting interviews with numerous individuals and thoroughly reviewing extensive video footage. Multiple police officers were working on the case. It was necessary to answer several difficult questions following the attack. The large number of victims raised concerns about whether the attack was a spontaneous act of aggression or a targeted assault. To investigate, all witnesses were interviewed, and authorities began analyzing mobile communications data, which proved to be a time-consuming task. The media was alerted to aid in the investigation. Law enforcement officers appealed to the public for assistance, urging anyone with valuable information to come forward and visit the police station. Specifically, they were looking for any video recordings that might have been taken by eyewitnesses, which could potentially show the car used by the perpetrator. To encourage people to share any relevant information, the police held a meeting with local residents. It was assumed that someone might have witnessed the attack or have information about the perpetrator. To encourage people to come forward, community leaders reassured residents that they should not be intimidated by the criminals or the local feuding clans. The police visited residents door to door to gather information and provide support. Specially trained officers worked with Edwards' family to provide emotional support during this difficult time. Through their efforts, it was discovered that the perpetrator had left the pub parking lot in a dark-colored car. Although witness accounts were limited due to the darkness, the vehicle was most likely a dark Mercedes. Later, outdoor surveillance cameras confirmed the events. The killer drove into the parking lot, but didn't immediately open fire. Instead, he observed the pub visitors for some time from his car, which was positioned to give him a clear view of the entrance and most of what was happening inside. He seemed to be waiting for the most convenient moment to attack. After a few minutes, when Edwards got out, the killer quickly got out of the car, fired 12 shots in a row, then immediately got back in and drove away. Investigators studied the recordings and concluded that the attacker acted alone, without any backup. Unfortunately, it was impossible to determine exactly where the perpetrator fled. The detectives conducted a thorough investigation, going door to door to speak with local residents, providing a detailed description of the car and the circumstances surrounding the incident. Their goal was to identify the killer. The streets were patrolled 24/7, and within 2 days, they had detained 2 suspects. However, their involvement in the crime couldn't be proven without proof. The detectives then made a public statement, vowing to continue their pursuit of the unknown shooter until they were brought to justice. This was intended to reassure local residents, who were outraged by the rising crime rates and the authorities' seeming inability to stop it. There was speculation that the attack may have been sparked by a feud between local gangs, with Edwards being an innocent bystander. However, this theory was still unconfirmed and required further investigation. It was determined that the intended targets of the shooting may have been Jake and Curran, 2 members of the local Beechwood gang who were at the pub that evening. They had a long-standing and intense feud with another group vying for control of the territory. On December 29th, police arrested a person of interest, but he was not the shooter. Although he had a solid alibi, the detective suspected that he may have been involved in planning the attack. Around the same time, authorities identified the dark Mercedes car used by the killer to leave the pub's parking lot. However, due to a lack of direct evidence, the name of a 3rd suspect was not released. The car was tracked through surveillance footage and identified with the help of cameras. However, the police were unable to respond in time. On December 31st, a report was filed with the police department stating that a fire had started near the scene of the shooting. When the special services arrived at the scene, they found a dark Mercedes engulfed in flames, which resembled the perpetrator's vehicle. The fire had completely burned out the vehicle, destroying valuable evidence. It's clear the perpetrators knew the police were closing in, so they intentionally destroyed one of the key pieces of evidence. Although the fire didn't completely destroy the car, investigators confirmed it was used during the shooting. However, the Mercedes had been stolen shortly before the attack and didn't belong to the perpetrators. The arson was likely committed to hinder the investigation. Following the January 11th murder, police took 2 more suspects into custody in Central Wales, Connor Chapman, 22, and the 23-year-old woman. Connor was a familiar figure to police, with his extensive criminal record. Before the murder of Edwards, Connor began his downward spiral into a life of crime with increasingly bold lawbreakings. His early offenses included a car theft under severe circumstances, and he was repeatedly suspected of robbery, hooliganism, and making threats. At one point, Connor led police on a high-speed chase before ditching the car and hiding in nearby bushes. Upon being caught, he feigned innocence, claiming he had no idea what the officers were talking about and was simply waiting for a friend. This brazen act earned him a degree of notoriety, landing his details in newspaper headlines. Connor Chapman, a resident of Birkenhead, Liverpool, was raised by his grandparents after being abandoned by his parents at a young age. He moved into their house and struggled academically, eventually dropping out of high school before his exams. As a teenager, Connor was considered a troublemaker and had his first brush with the law in 2014, when he was 14 years old, for shoplifting. 2 years later, in 2016, Connor committed another offense by stealing a car. He was caught driving the stolen vehicle without a license or insurance, violating the terms of his suspended sentence. In 2017, he was convicted of possession of a controlled substance, while also violating a restraining order by entering areas of the city he was banned from, all under police surveillance. Connor was prohibited from appearing in public due to the risk he posed to society. However, in 2018, he disregarded the ban and was detained by the authorities while in possession of a knife and banned substances. The same year, Connor Chapman came to the attention of the general public after a failed attempt to evade the police in a stolen vehicle. The incident occurred when the city patrols spotted a stolen Audi and instructed the driver to stop and exit the vehicle with hands raised. However, 18-year-old Connor refused to comply, leading to a pursuit. During the brief chase, Connor committed multiple traffic offenses, including exceeding 80 km/h in 30 km/h zones, repeatedly driving into oncoming traffic, and ultimately crashing into the curb at high speed. The impact sent the car careening to the side and spinning around. Unable to continue, Connor exited the vehicle and fled on foot. However, the patrol caught up with him in the bushes just a few hundred meters away. Connor claimed he was waiting for a friend, but it was clear he was not telling the truth. In court, Connor's lawyer explained that his client had been influenced by a group of older friends who were a bad influence. The court decided not to punish Connor and released him. It was discovered that he had attention deficit disorder, along with several other conditions, which were diagnosed by a private specialist. Connor in question was sentenced to up to 8 months in prison due to numerous traffic violations and reckless behavior. Additionally, he was banned from driving after his release. By the time he reached adulthood, he had accumulated 14 convictions for 30 separate offenses, demonstrating a clear pattern of disregard for the law and social norms. It is clear that he has no intention of reforming and constantly refuses to conform to the rules and norms of society. Although his behavior was recognized as potentially hazardous, there were no sufficient legal grounds to isolate him from the community, primarily because his actions had not yet resulted in serious harm to anyone. The public expressed anger and frustration with the authorities for not taking action against Connor Chapman, a man with multiple convictions. Despite his numerous run-ins with the law, he continued to commit crimes, putting innocent lives at risk. In January 2020, he was sentenced to 10 months in prison for possession of a cold weapon and substances in a public place. The police publicly warned the community about him, and after serving his sentence, he was wanted for at least 5 more crimes. When caught, Connor boasted about spending more time in prison than out, seemingly proud of his record. By 20, he had accumulated 19 sentences for 43 crimes. However, he was released again in the summer of 2022, just 6 months before the death of Elle Edwards. During this time, he appeared in court again, and his lawyer attempted to garner sympathy by sharing that Connor's first child was born while he was in prison. At this point, Connor's girlfriend was pregnant with a baby girl. He claimed to have turned his around and wanted to make amends, but this was just a ruse. In reality, he wanted to escape and return to his life of crime. The police were already aware of his involvement with a local gang that sold prohibited substances, but he was being tried for a lesser offense, the burglary and theft of 2 electric motorcycles. On December 24th, a violent altercation erupted between 2 rival gangs in Beechwood Estates, near the wooden church. The gangs were fighting over territory, but failed to reach an agreement. Seeking revenge, a young gangster armed himself with a submachine gun and waited 3 hours to track down his targets, Kieran and Jake Duffy, who were at the Moke pub. Just before midnight, he drove to the parking lot, identified his victims, and waited for the perfect moment to strike. Then he exited the car and fired 12 bullets into the building. Duffy was seriously injured, but he survived despite the life-threatening attack. However, Elle Edwards was not as fortunate. She was hit by 2 bullets in the head. Edwards fought for her life, but she died in the medic's arms on the way to the hospital. Edwards had unintentionally crossed paths with the killer's targets that evening and had no idea the night would end so tragically. The pub was crowded at the time of the attack. 1 person was killed, and 4 others were wounded. A 22-year-old man was shot in the leg, a 24-year-old man was wounded in the arm, and a 33-year-old man was injured in the wrist. Fortunately, none of these injuries were life-threatening. Edwards's friends tried to provide her with first aid and performed CPR at the scene. Unfortunately, their efforts were not enough to save her life. Edwards's sister, Lucy, was much luckier. She had been living in Dubai and had flown home to celebrate Christmas with her family just minutes before the attack. She had already left the pub, so she was not affected at all. Later, Lucy recalled how she had wanted to take her sister with her, but Edwards had wanted to stay with her friends. On January 25, 2023, a funeral was held for Edwards, who was tragically killed in a gang-related incident. Hundreds of people attended to pay their respects to the innocent victim. A hearse pulled by 4 white horses carried her body to the local church. As a sign of respect, the pub where she had last celebrated was closed for the day. The pub's owner also shared a message of support for her family on social media. Connor Chapman was subsequently charged with multiple offenses, including murder. It was discovered that Connor had an accomplice, 20-year-old Thomas. A video recording was found on Thomas during the searches, made shortly before the attack. In the video, Connor is seen handing over a weapon and stating his intention to settle accounts with someone. After the attack, Connor and Thomas hid the stolen Mercedes together, planning to dispose of it later. Although the murder weapon was never found, DNA traces from the killer were detected on one of the shell casings. It became clear that Connor had loaded the weapon before the attack, as evidenced by the presence of red gloves found at his house, which were visible in CCTV footage from Moke. After committing the crime, Connor and Thomas abandoned their car and ordered a taxi under a false name to throw off investigators. They used the taxi service to cover their tracks. At approximately 5 a.m., they went back to the location where they had hidden the car in order to take additional steps to cover their tracks and hide their involvement. Thomas Nord was found guilty of all charges in July 2023 and received a 9-year prison sentence. The relatively lenient sentence was due to his limited prior criminal history compared to Connor. Jake and Kieran, members of the local Beechwood gang, were wounded during the attack but managed to survive. Given their gang affiliation and the ongoing conflict with a rival group, the violent incident was not unexpected. It became known that on December 23, 2023, Connor Chapman's group, including Kieran and his friend, were attacked and beaten by another individual from the same group. Although they did not receive serious injuries, this incident occurred just a day before they were attacked with firearms. At the time, they seemed to view the beating as a random altercation and subsequently went to a pub to relax. After the shooting incident, while the shooter, Connor, awaited sentencing for the murder of an innocent victim, Kieran and his friend were already imprisoned. Kieran received a 27-month sentence for attacking members of a rival criminal group and an additional 9 months for the fight. His friend was sentenced to 2 years and 9 months for a similar offense. It appeared that Kieran and his friend were attempting to avenge the attempted murder. As a result, prohibitive court orders were issued against them, imposing various restrictions. Although this approach did not prevent the gang from engaging in further criminal activities, it did provide a basis for more severe punishment if they continued to disregard the court orders. The public was outraged that gang members received lenient sentences despite committing multiple crimes. It became clear that the existing bans were ineffective in maintaining public safety. For instance, Connor was banned from visiting the area where the pub was located, but he still managed to steal a car and enter the pub despite having a driving ban. During the trial for Elle Edwards' murder, Connor attempted to dispute the claim that he was the person seen in the CCTV footage. He claimed that at the time, he was at home wrapping Christmas gifts. Nevertheless, sufficient evidence was collected to expose the facts. The hearings lasted 3.5 weeks, exposing all the incident leading up to the attack. It was discovered that the motive behind the attack was a turf war between two rival gangs. Connor had no connection to Elle Edwards, he was completely indifferent to her fate, as well as the fate of the other innocent people in the bar. He was driven solely by uncontrolled rage. After attempting to murder two rivals, Connor planned to escape to Spain to evade capture. He used a stolen car and disposed of the murder weapon, trying to avoid detection by the police. He also avoided using public transportation. Ultimately, detectives apprehended Connor at the airport. After being arrested, Connor attempted to mislead the police by stating that the Mercedes he was seen driving on the day of the murder was not stolen. Instead, he claimed it was a shared vehicle used by his criminal group for distributing substances. He denied being the driver and continued to try to convince the jury that he was not the one who opened fire that evening. In a desperate bid to escape the consequences, Connor claimed he had only just discovered that someone from his group had used the vehicle to attack the pub. Before the jury deliberated on the verdict, Elle Edwards' father gave a heartfelt speech, expressing his hope that the perpetrator would never be able to spend Christmas with his loved ones as a free man again. The jurors, comprised of P. Asen and Sim Janine, reached a unanimous verdict after 3 hours of deliberation. They found Connor Chapman guilty of all charges, citing that he had committed the crime with callous disregard and showed no remorse for the accidental killing of Elle Edwards, taking away her promising life. Rather than showing regret, Connor spent several days systematically eliminating all evidence and traces of the murder that could implicate him. The motive behind the attack was attributed to a rivalry between criminal gangs. On July 7, 2023, Connor was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after serving 48 years of his sentence. After the verdict was announced, Elle Edwards' father raised his fist in triumph. However, the incident sparked widespread public outrage. The city's residents felt unsafe knowing they were caught in the middle of a turf war between rival gangs. These gangs possessed a large number of firearms and had shown a willingness to use them, as evidenced by Elle Edwards' murder. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Alyssa Burrett. Alyssa Burrett was born on December 31, 1995, in Mosquito, Texas, to Teresa and Burrett and Joshua Forey. She has 3 older sisters, Nikki, Madison, and Taylor, and 2 older brothers, Landon and Tyler. Alyssa showed creative talent from a young age. At the age of 7, she dreamed of becoming a fashion designer and even made her own clothes. Her grandfather, Russell Forey, a musician, encouraged Alyssa's passion, and at the age of 13, Alyssa decided to change her career path and pursue a career in law. Russell supported Alyssa's decision. After graduating from Roy City High School, Alyssa enrolled in a local college. When she was 18, Alyssa met a boy named Andrew Bird. He was 9 years older than her and seemed to be a mysterious bad boy. Despite her family's objections, Alyssa began pursuing Andrew. The relationship was unstable and complicated. Andrew did not work and relied on Alyssa for support. However, Andrew was very possessive, constantly monitoring Alyssa's every move. Her friends advised her to break up with Andrew many times, but Alyssa did not listen. In January 2019, 23-year-old Alyssa discovered that she was pregnant with Andrew's child. This unexpected pregnancy took Alyssa by surprise and forced her to rethink her future plans. Alyssa suspected that Andrew would not be a good father in the future, so Alyssa decided to break up with Andrew and raise her daughter on her own. Alyssa dropped out of college because of her pregnancy. On December 31, 2019, her 24th birthday, Alyssa gave birth to a healthy baby girl and named her Willow. Despite the challenges ahead, Alyssa is still trying her best to be a good mother. Alyssa often shares family photos on social media platforms. People close to Alyssa describe her as outspoken, energetic, kind, and has a bright smile. Alyssa has worked hard to earn money to take care of her daughter. She is working at Green Tree, a residential real estate company. With the support of her family, especially her grandparents, Alyssa tried to give her daughter a peaceful childhood while staying away from Andrew because she considered him unreliable. However, Andrew refused to give up. He initiated a fierce legal battle to gain custody of Willow, asserting that Andrew would achieve his goals at all costs and nothing could stop him. In April 2020, just 4 months after Willow was born, a woman named Holly Elkins, 22, appeared in Andrew's life. Holly Elkins quickly moved in with Andrew and began planning their life together. Holly Elkins saw Alyssa as a rival and sought to eliminate her from Andrew's life. Alyssa considered herself the best mother for Willow. She began to feel the growing threat from Andrew and his fiancée Holly Elkins. Friends advised Alyssa to be cautious and prepare for the worst. Little did Alyssa know that her life was about to be seriously threatened. As soon as Andrew Bird and Holly Elkins began dating, they immediately launched a plan to bring Alyssa down. Their goal was to ruin Alyssa's reputation and take away Alyssa's custody of their child in order to gain custody of Willow. In text messages, Holly Elkins openly expressed her desire to eliminate Alyssa. Holly Elkins wrote to Andrew that Alyssa was controlling him, making him prioritize Alyssa, and demanding that Andrew show subservience to Alyssa. Holly Elkins viciously criticized Alyssa, calling her a liar, stupid, and a bad mother. Holly Elkins encouraged Andrew to take action against Alyssa, claiming that Alyssa was hindering their family happiness with Willow. Holly Elkins and Andrew installed a GPS tracking device on Alyssa's car to monitor her every move. Holly Elkins then anonymously called 911, falsely reporting that Alyssa was driving erratically in order to discredit her with the police. On another occasion, Holly Elkins went to the police station and falsely accused Alyssa of attacking her. To prove this story, Holly Elkins scratched her chest. The couple also hired a private investigator to find evidence against Alyssa and her new boyfriend. However, the detective did not find any evidence that could incriminate Alyssa, but Holly Elkins and Andrew did not give up. In September 2020, Holly Elkins and Andrew hid drugs and unregistered weapons in Alyssa's car and anonymously reported that Alyssa was trafficking drugs from her car. During the interrogation, Alyssa cried and insisted that she had nothing to do with drugs and immediately suspected Andrew of having a role in the plot, with the aim of discrediting Alyssa in the eyes of the police. Unfortunately, she could not prove it. Holly Elkins and Andrew planned every detail of the crime. On September 10, 2020, Holly Elkins went to a sports store with Andrew. There, Andrew bought a black raincoat with cash, and Holly Elkins helped Andrew choose the right outfit for the crime plan. On September 14th, Holly Elkins went to a pharmacy and bought dark foundation and other cosmetics to disguise Andrew. On September 19th, Holly Elkins and Andrew stopped by a hardware store where they bought shotgun shells and a large Camillus knife. Both the gun and knife would be used by Andrew to take revenge on his daughter's mother, Alyssa. During the last week of September, Holly Elkins texted Andrew frequently, urging him to carry out the plan. Holly Elkins stressed that they needed to resolve the issue. Holly Elkins knew that their relationship would be in danger if Andrew did not act. Upon receiving the text messages, Andrew put his plan into action. The search history on Andrew's phone showed that he had begun researching how to remove gunpowder residue from his hands after shooting, indicating that Andrew did not want to leave any traces. 6 days before the attack, Alyssa and Andrew purchased a used black Ford Expedition. Andrew told the seller that he would use the car to supervise a school project. On the morning of October 2nd, Andrew disguised himself as another man. Andrew wore a black raincoat and parked his Ford Expedition SUV near Alyssa's home. Through text messages provided by Holly Elkin, Andrew learned Alyssa's daily routine and determined where Andrew could find Alyssa. On the morning of October 2nd, 2020, Alyssa dropped off her 1-year-old daughter, Willow, at her grandmother's house while she was on her way to work at Green Tree Home Management in Carrollton, as she did every day. Alyssa parked her car in front of the office around 9 a.m. and was about to enter the house when a black SUV sped toward her car. Andrew, dressed in a black hoodie, wearing a mask and holding a handgun, attacked Alyssa. She had no chance to react before he approached her and shot her in the head through the window. Alyssa dropped to the steering wheel, her face and hair covered in blood. Despite her serious injuries, Alyssa still had enough strength to open the car door and tried to crawl toward the office door. Alyssa was trying to call for help, but her body was weak and covered in blood. Despite the critical situation, Alyssa showed incredible willpower in her final moments. Andrew quickly returned when he saw movement. He pulled a large hunting knife from his coat and attacked Alyssa, who was on the ground. Andrew grabbed Alyssa's hair and brutally stabbed her multiple times in the neck, chest, and abdomen, totaling at least 13 wounds. Alyssa died on the spot from these severe injuries. When Alyssa's co-workers ran out to the parking lot after hearing her screams, they found Alyssa lying in a pool of blood with her throat slit. They attempted to revive Alyssa using CPR but were unsuccessful. By this time, Andrew had escaped in his black SUV, leaving the bloody weapon at the scene. Witnesses described the attacker as a tall, muscular man dressed all in black with a mask or hood. Many people mistook him for an African American at the time of the attack. According to Holly Elkins, she was at home with Andrew's daughter, Willow, giving her an alibi. Holly Elkins later told police that Andrew was believed to be with her the entire time. The brutal murder, which happened so brazenly in a public place, shocked the people of Carrollton. They were puzzled about the motive for this dangerous crime. However, Alyssa's loved ones and friends immediately suspected Andrew Bird. They knew about the ongoing dispute between Alyssa and Andrew over the custody of their child. Alyssa's mother, holding back tears, reported her suspicions about Andrew to the police. She shared with the police about Andrew's threats and harassment of Alyssa, as well as the long legal battle for custody of her granddaughter. According to her, Andrew had repeatedly stated that Alyssa would not be allowed to raise their daughter Willow. The investigation into Alyssa Burkett's murder was launched. At first, Alyssa's colleagues provided details about the attacker's appearance. This man, despite wearing a mask, was tall, muscular, appeared to be muscular, and some even thought he was African American. The testimony of Alyssa's loved ones made her ex-boyfriend, Andrew Bird, the main subject of the investigation. Alyssa's new boyfriend also said that Andrew had given them detailed addresses, even though no one had told Andrew. Based on this information, police began tracking Andrew's location in Rowlett. Not long after, they saw Andrew, along with his daughter Willow, packing up to leave for an extended period of time. When Andrew got into the car, the police stopped and searched the unmarked car. During the search, they found men's boots cut into pieces and soaked in drugs. Police discovered items related to camouflage makeup, napkins with makeup on them. When police searched Andrew's home, they found a lot of evidence. They discovered the pin for a GPS tracking device that Andrew had attached to Alyssa and her new boyfriend's car. Police also found an automatic silencer for a handgun and a cache of weapons. And police also found the phone that Andrew used when he called the police to report the discovery of drugs in Alyssa's car. Police confiscated 3 of Andrew's phones. When police checked the search history of one of those cell phones, they found questions about how to disassemble a gun barrel on his hand. This suggests that Andrew was trying to cover his tracks. Police found an abandoned black Ford Expedition SUV on the outskirts of town. When they examined the cabin, forensic experts found Alyssa's blood and fake beard hairs with Andrew's DNA. The dealer confirmed that Andrew had bought the car and paid in cash. Forensic tests showed that Alyssa's fatal bullet was fired from a .45 caliber handgun found in the car. Andrew's fingerprints were also found on the handle of the hunting knife. Additionally, Andrew's handwriting appeared on GPS devices and in calls to police. It appears that the prosecution has assembled evidence of Andrew Bird's guilt. However, the complaint also seeks to hold his co-defendant, Holly Elkins, accountable. Email exchanges between Andrew and Holly Elkins revealed Holly Elkins' role in planning and inciting the crime. The investigation spanned several months, during which time the prosecution assembled strong evidence tying Andrew and Holly Elkins to the brutal death of Alyssa Burrett. In June 2022, the Alyssa Burrett murder trial began, nearly 2 years after the tragedy. The 2 defendants, 35-year-old Andrew Bird and 23-year-old Holly Elkins, were charged with stalking, conspiracy and first-degree murder. A key witness was Christopher Mayo, Alyssa's new boyfriend at the time of her death. Christopher Mayo told the jury what had happened over the course of several months, including the arguments and troubles they had endured. Christopher Mayo recalled numerous occasions when Alyssa expressed to him her fear that Andrew would harm her. Christopher Mayo witnessed Andrew's frequent threats over the phone, along with lies that damaged Alyssa's reputation with social services and the police. In addition, Christopher Mayo believed that the person directly directing all of the above actions was Holly Elkins. Alyssa's co-workers and friends shared her grief. Before her death, Alyssa shared with her co-workers and friends her fear of Andrew and the feeling of being constantly watched. Alyssa even told a friend that if anything happened to her, Andrew would be the one to do it. Forensic experts presented the jury with a large amount of physical evidence linking Andrew Bird to the crime scene. The evidence included Andrew's DNA and fingerprints on the murder weapon, as well as gunpowder residue and camouflage in his home and car. And evidence of email exchanges between Andrew and Holly Elkins, indicating they had planned the crime together. Andrew's defense argued that his actions were unintentional and not premeditated. The defense also stressed that Andrew was under a lot of pressure and stress from the protracted legal battle, which had affected Andrew's emotions. However, evidence from the correspondence and the careful planning of the act refutes these theories. Meanwhile, Holly Elkins denied any involvement, offering a plea, but her testimony was also full of lies. Holly Elkins' text messages incited Andrew to take action against her rival Alyssa. In May 2023, the judge handed down the verdict. Andrew Bird was sentenced to 43 years in prison. Holly Elkins was sentenced to 20 years in prison for being an accessory to a crime. The courtroom erupted in applause as justice was finally served. Alyssa Burrett's killers got what they deserved. Alyssa family, in pain and tears, expressed deep gratitude to the journalists and the jury. Although the killer faces a harsh sentence, Alyssa Burrett's family cannot make up for their terrible loss. Hi there, investigators. It's time to uncover the truth behind another case. The case of Zara Alena. Zara Alena was born in England in the winter of 1986. As the eldest of 5 children, Zara's birth held great significance, symbolizing her mother's aspirations for a better future. Additionally, she was the first granddaughter of Radha Parvin, a distinction that earned her special respect and status within the family. Growing up, Zara was doted on by her relatives and raised in a multi-generational household. Despite their financial struggles, Zara's parents prioritized her education, believing it would provide her with a good life. Zara's family had big plans for her future, but their hopes were overshadowed by the dangers and difficulties that surrounded them, putting Zara's safety at risk. Zara had an unrelenting passion and thirst for life from a very young age. This led her to develop a love for tap dancing, a form of self-expression where each step brought out a rhythm that evoked a sense of harmony. Additionally, and swimming, which gave her a sense of freedom from the monotony of daily life. Her exquisite style and artistic approach to fashion allowed her to express her dreams through her outfits. However, these pursuits were just the beginning of her journey. Her first experience with skating ignited a new sense of freedom within her. Skating evolved into more than just a hobby for her. It became a powerful outlet for self-expression, allowing her to connect with her deepest emotions and inner self. Those close to Zara were unsurprised when she shared her aspiration to become a lawyer, driven by a desire to protect and support others. Her warm personality spread happiness and positivity, making those around her feel uplifted and inspired. Zara's eyes sparkled, and her gaze was captivating. Her curly black hair added to her striking appearance. She has a magnetic appeal, combining qualities such as passion, kindness, and courage, along with undeniable charm. As a teenager, she had the chance to explore England, visiting museums and galleries that fueled her interest in art and culture. Her travels showcased independence and unrelenting passion for knowledge and discovery. Following her initial trips, she later traveled to other parts of Europe. These adventures show that she inherited her family's passion for discovery and exploration of new things. Zara's aunt, Farah, was a significant influence on her. Unlike many others who chose to settle in the UK, Farah settled in Portugal. What captivated Zara was her aunt's work as a psychotherapist, particularly her involvement with women's organizations. As a result, Zara made it a point to visit her aunt on multiple occasions. Zara began turning her dreams into a reality when she earned admission to the University of Westminster immediately after high school graduation. She dedicated herself to pursuing her objectives, all while taking care of her mother and grandmother at the same time. Although she was short, she had endless energy and a deeply passionate personality. Zara is a compassionate person who has positively impacted the lives of many refugees forced to flee their homes due to conflict, she using her influence to speak out about their stories. She also volunteered at community canteens, aiding the homeless. Zara has a remarkable talent for understanding what others need, and she always makes time for them a priority in her busy schedule. Her easygoing personality made her a delight to be around. She frequently visited her aunt, Smee Naz, who lived nearby, often seeking her help with exam preparation, but their study sessions inevitably turned into laughter-filled moments. Those who knew Zara remember that she brought happiness wherever she went. Moreover, she was diligent, covering her own expenses and providing support to her family. Zara was a familiar face at a local clothing store, where she worked and interacted with everyone in the community, from teenagers to the elderly. Her kindness and willingness to help others were notable traits. Despite being talkative, she was a good listener and extended her generosity to all living beings, especially cats. She would often spend her own money to care for stray cats, taking them to the vet or convincing neighbors to adopt them. Zara's friend, Sanji Naira, described her as radiant and thought that her most significant gift was her ability to share optimism with others. Whenever Sanji was down, he would turn to Zara for help. Zara had a special person in her life, Carissa Peters, who was more than just a friend. They formed a strong bond as they fought together for justice and women's rights, a common goal that forged a lasting friendship despite life's obstacles. They felt a strong sense of comfort and familiarity in each other's homes and maintained a daily phone routine, using this time to share news, discuss their thoughts, and make plans for the future. After passing her exams and completing her law internship in 2002, Zara had the opportunity to work at the Crown Prosecution Service. This was a significant step toward realizing her dream of becoming a full-fledged lawyer. To achieve this, Zara persevered with her work despite facing many difficulties, including worries from her mother and grandmother, as well as financial struggles. This achievement was significant for her and for the people who believed in, supported her through the challenges she faced on her path to a better life. On her first day at the new job, Zara felt an overwhelming sense of happiness. She shared a smiley selfie with friends and family, as if announcing the start of a new chapter in her life to the world. This new job was the final piece in the puzzle of her dreams, a culmination of years of hard work. Although being an administrator might seem like a secondary role to some, it was a significant milestone for Zara. At 35 years old, she entered a new phase of her life, which sparked in her a sense of excitement and determination that filled her with a clear direction and goal. This wasn't just another working day. It marked the beginning of a new era in her life, one where she felt truly fulfilled and happy. The new job boosted Zara's confidence, and she felt it was time to start her own family. She envisioned her children living happy, protected lives filled with love and harmony. With each passing day, Zara saw herself moving closer to her dream of having a family. Her life was busy with work, volunteering, friends, and support from her mother and grandmother, who shared her home and provided care when needed. Despite her packed schedule, Zara enjoyed walking and valued her freedom of movement. She didn't let small things hold her back and would often carry a spare pair of shoes in her bag to change into sneakers when needed. Zara believed that women should be able to move freely without any obstacles or restrictions. However, a man named Jordan McSweeney, who lived nearby, posed a threat to Zara's freedom. Jordan was a few years younger than Zara, and his origins were unknown. One Saturday evening, after the sun had set, Zara was on her way to meet a friend. Despite not being in the mood, but she chose not to cancel, honoring her commitment. Zara was recognized for being extremely reliable and keeping her commitments, especially to her friends. Before leaving, she called Aunt Farah, but this time, a hint of anxiety crept into her voice. Aunt Farah cautioned Zara to be careful, and although she wasn't venturing far from home, the evening atmosphere felt unusual and unpredictable. Zara assured herself that she was familiar with every part of the city and that people knew who she was. Nevertheless, something about this evening unsettled her, making her heart beat faster, and she decided to exercise extra caution. Zara met her friend at the Ilford Big Spoon, a local bar on London's West End, at the scheduled time. Ilford in London is a vibrant and culturally diverse neighborhood ideal for evening meals and socializing. One Saturday evening, Zara and her friend came to this area. They then headed to another bar, where Zara had a couple of glasses of water. Meanwhile, Jordan was at a nearby nightclub, having one drink after another. As he drank, an idea formed in his mind, and he decided to act on it. He was determined to find a woman to attack that night. Security cameras captured Jordan's behavior at the club's entrance, where he would hug and try to kiss women without their consent. He was particularly aggressive with one employee, despite her clear discomfort. Eventually, he was kicked out of the club around 11 p.m., and his behavior was recorded on camera. After leaving the club, cameras continued to capture Jordan's actions as he walked down Romford Street towards the park. As Jordan walked, he spotted a woman and began to follow her. Jordan approached her, and she tried to avoid him by entering a store. However, Jordan waited for her outside, and when she left the store, he followed her again. He then crossed the street, keeping her in sight. When the woman entered her house, Jordan was forced to continue on his way. According to security footage, around 2 a.m. on Cranbrook Street, Jordan noticed another woman approaching him. Suddenly, Jordan quickened his pace, approaching a woman. However, 2 passing witnesses noticed his suspicious behavior, which was captured on video. Despite this, the woman managed to return home safely, leaving Jordan surprised and frustrated. He then returned to Cranbrook Street, having been unsuccessful. Around the same time, Zara and her friend decided to leave the bar and head home. It was 2 a.m. Her friend took a taxi, but Zara chose to walk, given the short distance and pleasant weather. As they parted ways, Zara began walking down Cranbrook Street, a residential area just a 10-minute walk from her house. It was then that Jordan spotted her. According to Chief Inspector Dave Williams, Jordan had a clear intention that night to attack a woman, regardless of the location. Cranbrook Street remained busy, even in the early hours, with a steady flow of traffic. Jordan had a history of offenses dating back to 2006 to 2009, for which he was sentenced in a Kent juvenile court at the age of 13. In August 2010, at the age of 17, he was found guilty of assaulting a girl, causing her to suffer a swollen eye. He received a 4-month detention and correction period as a result. 11 years after his initial offense, Jordan committed another crime against a woman, resulting in a 3-year ban from approaching her, either directly or indirectly. By 2010, he had a total of 28 convictions for 69 different offenses. These offenses included theft, assault on both police officers and the general public, motor vehicle theft, traffic infractions, committing crimes while out on bail, and shoplifting. Jordan used a social media platform to boast about his extensive collection of weapons and glorify a life of crime. He shared various photos and quotes, as well as fake images claiming the FBI was searching for him. After being imprisoned for crimes including criminal damage, racially aggravated harassment, and carrying a bladed weapon, Jordan was released on parole on June 17, 2022. One of the conditions of his parole was to regularly meet with his assigned parole officer. Following his release, Jordan resided in a van on St. Valentine Street, located in a 130-acre park in the Gun Hill area of London's Redbridge district, the largest green space in the region. Jordan broke all the rules of his parole and missed 2 scheduled meetings with his parole officer. As a result, the authorities decided not to show him any mercy. On June 22, 2022, the parole service started the process to send Jordan back to prison, but they didn't notify the police until 2 days later. On the morning of Saturday, June 25, 2022, police went to his mother's house to arrest him, only to find he was not there. In the early hours of June 26, 2022, a horrific crime occurred in Ilford. Zara was discovered on the sidewalk, displaying signs of abuse, with her belongings scattered around her. Her body showed evidence of severe injuries, her clothes were torn, and her eyes indicated a desperate struggle for survival. A passerby immediately recognized the gravity of the situation and began administering chest compressions and CPR in an attempt to save Zara's life. Despite the efforts of passers-by and emergency medical responders, Zara's injuries proved too severe. She fought for her life but ultimately passing away at 9:58 a.m. on Sunday. At approximately 11 a.m., security cameras in the park captured Jordan disposing of evidence, including his clothes, with an air of indifference and calmness. This behavior suggested that the act of violence was premeditated rather than random. The police swiftly responded and visited Zara's grandmother, asking her to identify her granddaughter from video footage taken at the bar. Upon confirmation of Zara's identity, the police informed her grandmother about the incident. Zara's uncle Kasim then contacted other family members, including Aunt Farah in Portugal, to break the news. Farah recalled receiving the distressing call on Saturday night, which prompted her to immediately travel to London. The family was deeply shocked and struggling to cope with the intense sadness of Zara's passing. Concurrently, detectives initiated an investigation in the area where Zara's body was found. They began by gathering footage from surveillance cameras to reconstruct the attacker's movements. The combination of video evidence and bloody fingerprints discovered near the crime scene enabled the identification of Jordan as the primary suspect. Utilizing a video surveillance system, the police tracked Jordan's location and obtained images of him. Inspector Dave dispatched an officer to Gun Hill to verify if anyone recognized Jordan. The operation yielded swift results, as Jordan was found sleeping in his van shortly thereafter. The authorities immediately arrested Jordan, who was found with blood-stained clothes and shoes that he was trying to dispose of. Despite lengthy interrogations, he refused to speak or reveal any information about himself. Meanwhile, new video footage emerged, allowing police to piece together the incident surrounding the crime. The incident led parole officer Justin Russell to criticize the handling of Jordan's case, highlighting a series of errors. Jordan has a criminal history dating back to the age of 16 and has been in prison several times, making him a subject at high risk of committing a crime. After being released from detention, he missed several scheduled supervision appointments. Authorities failed to take prompt action to return him to prison. Zara's family described the last few days as incredibly shocking, acknowledging that their loss was irreparable. However, in the face of such grief, they were touched by the warmth and kindness people have shown. The family faced a significant amount of work and needed to find the strength to cope. Aunt Farah took charge of communicating with the media and meeting with the police. Even though they were dealing with their own shock and grief, the family understood that taking control of the situation was crucial to protect Zara from possible accusations by some media outlets. A preliminary hearing for the Jordan case occurred on July 1, 2022. A subsequent hearing was scheduled for September 30, 2022, to prepare testimonies for the trial. However, the trial was postponed because Jordan did not appear on the scheduled day. On July 2, a memorial service was held for Zara, organized by her family. The service took place along the route Zara would have taken home, representing her final, unfinished journey. Many attendees wore white to symbolize a silent walk. Over 120 organizations that specialize in supporting women attended, showing solidarity in the fight against violence. These organizations collaborated with Zara Alena's family and publicly pushed for justice and accountability. They stressed that it's crucial to address violence against women and stopping perpetrators from committing such acts. During a preliminary hearing at East London Court in Walthamstow, crime scene investigator Nadia Persat testified. She stated that local police officers could have done more to locate Jordan before he attacked Zara. Persat believes the jury should investigate this matter further. On November 16, 2022, Jordan failed to appear at the hearing, despite being informed that his attendance was mandatory. As a result, a video call was arranged, during which he pleaded guilty. Prosecutor Oliver Glasgow argued that Jordan would be unfit for bail, and Judge Chima Grave agreed. The judge postponed the verdict until December 14 of the same year. However, as that date approached, Jordan failed to appear in court. Despite his absence, Jordan was eventually convicted and sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 33 years for the murder of Zara Alena. Jordan and his representatives appealed the sentence, which was subsequently reduced to 33 years in prison. The judge took into account that Zara was unconscious at the time of her death and therefore did not experience any suffering, which was a key factor in the decision to reduce the sentence. For months after the incident, it was revealed that Jordan had a personal relationship with a 32-year-old woman who worked at the Belmarsh Correctional Facility in South London. The woman, who was not a direct employee of the prison services but worked at the facility, was arrested and investigated for suspected misconduct in a public office. Zara Alena's family still fondly remembers her with love and pride. Her aunt, Farah, continues to advocate against violence towards women and girls. In March 2023, Farah participated in a march organized by various groups to raise awareness about the issue. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Velma Barfield. Velma Barfield was born in 1932 in Eastover, North Carolina, and grew up in the shadow of the Great Depression. In a poor family of 9 children, Velma's family worked hard on tobacco farms, but life was still difficult. Velma's father, Murphy Bullard, was an outspoken man. Murphy often flew into fits of rage, and Velma claimed that her father physically and mentally abused her and her sisters. Velma's mother, Lily Bullard, suffered from her husband's fiery temper. In their world, love and care were considered luxuries. As a result, Velma and her brothers had a difficult childhood, lacking affection and constantly facing the threat of violence. As a child, Velma noticed a glaring disparity in her finances between herself and her friends. This sparked her first acts of crime. At first, Velma took small amounts of money from her father to buy small items that her classmates liked. However, her stealing gradually became fatter when she stole $80 from an elderly neighbor. When the matter was discovered, her father punished Velma very severely. After that, she gave up stealing. Raised in a Catholic family, Velma found comfort and faith in the Bible. However, as she grew up, the psychological trauma from her past shaped her into a woman with special power. During World War II, the world around her changed rapidly. The war caused her family to face many difficulties. Velma was forced to take responsibility for her life and family early. Her dreams and desires were often hidden behind her primary goal of survival. As Velma grew older, her desire for a better life grew, and she longed to escape her difficult circumstances. At the age of 17, Velma decided to drop out of school. In her search for love and work, she met Thomas Burke, and the two later married, but this marriage brought new difficulties. By the age of 19, Velma had 2 children, a son named Ron and a daughter named Kim. For more than 15 years, the family lived in Parkton, North Carolina. In 1965, Thomas was in a serious car accident and suffered head injuries. To cope with the pain and headaches caused by the injury, Thomas became a heavy drinker and drug addict. This affected his family, especially Velma, who had experienced past trauma due to her father's alcohol abuse. Velma vowed never to let history repeat itself, but she also faced difficulties in her own life. During this time, Velma faced many pressures, including an unhappy marriage, motherhood, and past patterns. Velma tried to find stability by working at a textile factory, but she soon had to quit to deal with health issues. She then had to undergo an emergency hysterectomy. After the surgery, Velma began to suffer from seizures and was prescribed medication. However, the use of seizure medication gradually became a habit, causing her to become mentally impaired. Velma's drinking increased, each step pushing her into a more desperate and out-of-control state. On April 4, 1969, while she and her children were away from home, the house caught fire. Thomas, who was still in the house, died of smoke inhalation. After the fire, Velma and her children moved in with her parents. A few months after her Thomas's death, Velma began a relationship with a divorced man named Jennings Barfield. They married in August 1970. However, their relationship did not last. After an argument, Jennings died of a heart attack on March 21, 1971. Velma returned to her parents' home. Later, Velma's father died of cancer in the summer of 1974. Her mother also suffered from severe stomach pain and was hospitalized. Although she recovered and returned home in August 1974, Velma's mother was hospitalized again due to severe stomach pain. Because her illness was so severe, she died after 2 hours of treatment. Another man Velma was dating was in a car accident and died on December 30th of the same year. Velma's financial difficulties and addiction led to another bad decision. She started forging checks to meet her growing needs. But deception came at a cost, and those around her began to lose faith in Velma. In 1975, Velma was convicted of 7 counts of writing bad checks and sentenced to 6 months in prison. However, she was released after serving 3 months. After her release in 1976, Velma took a job caring for the elderly. She initially worked for 94-year-old Montgomery Edwards and his 84-year-old wife in Lumberton, North Carolina. Montgomery fell ill and died on January 29, 1977. A few weeks later, in February, Montgomery's wife Dolly developed symptoms of the same stomach illness as Velma's mother and died on March 1. Velma then cared for Record Lee, 76, who had lost a leg. On June 4, 1977, Record Lee's husband, John Henry, began experiencing severe pain and cramps in his abdomen. Doctors attributed his condition to a severe stomach virus. However, he died later that month. Velma then moved in with her new boyfriend, Roland Stewart. While attending a Pentecostal revival meeting in Cumberland County, Roland Stewart suddenly complained of severe abdominal pain. He was rushed to the hospital but could not be saved, dying a few days later. Roland Stewart's relatives were suspicious of his mysterious death. They reported to the police to find out the reason for Roland Stewart's death. An autopsy was ordered. An investigation into Roland Stewart's death was opened. Before the autopsy results were released, Lumberton police received an anonymous phone call, reportedly from Velma's sister, who said that Velma had poisoned Roland Stewart and others. As a result, Velma was arrested for the murder of Roland Stewart. During the interrogation, Velma confessed to poisoning Montgomery and Dolly Edwards, John Henry, her mother Lillian, and her boyfriend Roland Stewart. Velma confessed that she had forged checks to her boyfriend Roland Stewart's account and that he had found out about it, so Velma had mixed rat poison into his beer and tea, and in previous victims Velma had given weed killers containing paraquat and barbiturates. Velma had secretly put these substances into her victims' food or drinks, leading to their deaths. At trial, Velma's defense attorney argued that she was insane, but this was not accepted. Velma appeared cold and emotionless, laughing at the prosecutor and even applauding after his closing speech. The defense attorney attempted to explain that Velma was not a monster but a soul trapped by addiction, and that the difficult circumstances she had experienced since childhood had caused Velma's actions to be beyond her control. The attorney emphasized Velma's mental health struggles as a mitigating factor in Velma's crimes. December 12, 1978. The jury considered the circumstances and decided to sentence Velma to death for murder and causing harm to the victim's family. The verdict was an acknowledgement of the victim's family's irreplaceable loss. A unit for female death row inmates was later established at the North Carolina Correctional Institution for Women. While on death row, Velma quit smoking and expressed remorse. At night, the faces of her victims haunted her dreams, and Velma silently contemplated the crimes she had committed. Velma's appeal was filed with the North Carolina Supreme Court on October 30, 1984. The appeal claimed that she was incompetent at her original trial due to her struggles with drug addiction. However, the court denied her appeal. The day before her execution, Velma instructed her attorney, Jimmy, to withdraw all remaining appeals. She expressed her desire to die with dignity, as allowed by the state of North Carolina. In her final hours, Velma reflected on her life and prayed, finding solace in her faith as she prepared for death. Pastor Billy Graham offered her words of comfort over the phone, saying, "Velma, in a way I envy you because you're going to get to heaven before I do." Velma was executed on November 2, 1984, at the Central Penitentiary in Raleigh. Before her execution, she expressed remorse for the pain she had caused, stating that she was deeply sorry for the pain she had caused and that many families had suffered greatly. She also expressed her gratitude to those who had supported her over the past 6 years, saying that she appreciated the unwavering support of her family, her attorneys, and the kindness of the prison staff, and that she was grateful for their compassion and understanding during this difficult time. For her final meal, Velma chose a simple snack of cheese doodles and a Coca-Cola. She spent her last hours with family members and friends who visited her before her execution. Despite the circumstances, Velma remained calm and at peace. Velma was led to her execution wearing pink pajamas and medical devices attached to her chest, including a stethoscope and heart monitor. She was secured to a gurney with straps at her body and legs, and then wheeled to the execution chamber just before 2 a.m. outside the prison. 2 opposing groups of protesters had gathered. Pro-death penalty supporters were present, and anti-death penalty advocates, who criticized Governor Hunt for not showing compassion and claimed the woman could still contribute positively to society from behind bars. As the execution approached, other inmates demonstrated their anxiety by banging on the windows of their cells in unison. A group of about 80 people who supported capital punishment showed their approval through cheers and applause. 3 volunteers carried out the execution, with a dummy intravenous line ensuring that none knew for certain which of them had administered the fatal dose. Velma's execution took place at 2:15 a.m., just 15 minutes after being given the lethal injection of procan bromide. Those present at the execution reported that she passed away without any apparent suffering. Around 300 death penalty opponents stood nearby in silence, holding candles that they extinguished as the moment of her death approached. After the execution, Velma's body was taken by ambulance to a medical school for use in her previously expressed wish to donate her organs for transplantation. Her burial followed at a small North Carolina cemetery close to the gravesite of her first husband, Thomas Burke. She was 52 years old at the time of her death. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Nancy Lagerquist. Nancy Lagerquist, an 87-year-old woman, was a resident at the Riverside Healthcare Center, where she had lived since 1988. She was born in 1902 in Hamilton, Montana, and she spent much of her life working as an executive secretary. She was also an active member of the Missoula Business and Professional Women's Club before her retirement. She remained single for her entire life and did not have any children. When she passed away, she also did not have many relatives. On July 1, 1990, Nancy was seen sleeping in her bed by a care worker at 3:30 a.m. 1 hour later, at 4:30 a.m., the care worker checked on her room again but found her missing. This caused alarm and prompted 5 staff members on the shift to conduct a search. Despite their efforts, Nancy was nowhere to be found. At 4:41 a.m., the police were notified about her disappearance. It is worth noting that Nancy required around-the-clock assistance as she was unable to walk. Before her disappearance, she had been living an ordinary life at the care home, with nothing in her background suggesting she was at risk. Law enforcement and search and rescue teams arrived quickly at the scene. They searched the home and the surrounding area thoroughly. Since the home was located along the Clark Fork River, police officers in boats also searched the water. At 6:30 a.m., they stopped searching. Authorities found Nancy's body near the riverbank, about 30 minutes downstream from Riverside. She was the victim of a brutal murder involving sexual assault. Afterward, her body was thrown into the water. 2 investigators working on the case quickly realized the enormity of the challenge ahead. The discovery of Nancy's body in the water resulted in the destruction of any forensic evidence. Additionally, several key pieces of evidence, including Nancy's missing diaper and the possible murder weapon, were never found, leaving the police with unanswered questions. Detectives theorized that the perpetrator entered and exited Nancy's room through the window facing the river. To do this, they cut the window screen, but left no evidence on the window, windowsill, or anywhere else in the room. It is also puzzling that none of the home's alarm systems were triggered during the entry, and further checks revealed that all alarms were working properly at the time. A key witness reported seeing a man near the crime scene around 4 a.m. He walked through the parking lot of the Missoula Athletic Club, moving away from the river toward East Broadway Street. This individual was approximately 30 to 40 years old, 180 to 200 pounds, and had distinct physical features, including light brown collar-length hair, a mustache, and brown-rimmed glasses. He wore an untucked, striped white and brown t-shirt, which was longer at the back, along with tan shorts and white tennis shoes. The man was not considered a suspect in the case, but the police did want to question him. Nancy had very few relatives, so investigators quickly dismissed a family-related motive for the murder. They shifted their focus to the care home staff. Considering that a staff member would be familiar with the layout and security measures of the facility, leading them to suspect that the murder could be an inside job. This led authorities to concentrate on a particular male staff member. He was eventually cleared, but he left the care home less than a month later for unclear reasons. The police investigation shifted from focusing on a staff member to the possibility of an outside perpetrator. They observed that the home's security measures concentrated on the doors rather than the windows, leading them to speculate that the victim, Nancy, might have been targeted simply because her room faced the river, with no specific motive for the attack. During the investigation, a man named James Bailey was interviewed multiple times, but was eventually cleared as a suspect. Detectives have been reviewing witness statements to look for any other suspicious deaths at the nursing home. Their attention was drawn to the case of 86-year-old Bertha Scott, an Alzheimer's patient who passed away in her bed on May 2, 1990. At the time, her death was attributed to natural causes, as she had heart disease and was frequently restrained at night to prevent her from wandering. However, one nurse reported an unusual detail, a bruise on Bertha's neck, which they found suspicious. Bertha died and was buried without an autopsy being performed. Around the time of her death, staff members at her care home noticed some minor tampering with the windows in the physical therapy room. Based on a nurse's comments, the police decided to exhume Bertha's body to re-examine her cause of death. The police later revealed to her family that she had been raped, then she being strangled to death, leaving them in shock. Bertha's life is very different from Nancy's. Born in Pennsylvania in 1904, and Bertha married 20 years later. 2 years before her death, she moved to Missoula to be closer to her children. Although 4 of her 6 children had passed away before her, she left behind numerous grandchildren. During the medical examination of Bertha's body, semen was found, and the sample was collected. Unfortunately, the sample was too degraded to produce a DNA profile, therefore was unable to help the police identify her killer. Both cases eventually came to a dead end. In 1992, authorities investigated a suspect who was guilty of sexually assaulting a nursing home resident, but he had an alibi since he was in prison during the murders. The same year, Lloyd Chase Allen was also identified as a suspect, but he too was incarcerated at the time. In 2002, the Missoulian reported that several residents of the care home described a mysterious man who would walk the halls at night. There are concerns about the accuracy of the information provided by these residents, so it's difficult to determine whether this man actually existed. As a result, it is that additional unsolved cases exist. Without DNA evidence or further investigation, a resolution to this case seems unlikely. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Kaysera Stops Pretty Places. Kaysera Stops Pretty Places was born on August 14, 2001. She grew up in a large family and was a member of the Crow and North Cheyenne Native American reservations in Montana. As a teenager, she was an exceptional athlete, enjoying various sports including basketball, football, running, cross-country, and wrestling. She also had a passion for the arts, performing in plays and singing in her high school choir at Hardin High School. Kaysera is a kind and compassionate person, always caring and understanding to those she comes into contact with. In her free time, she often cared for stray animals. Her lifelong dream was to become a performer, aspiring to act and sing, with a bright future ahead of her. However, her life was tragically cut short shortly after she turned 18. Kaysera was last seen in the rural town of Hardin, near the Crow Reservation, on August 24, 2019. She lives with her grandmother, who is named Yolanda Frazier. People did not know where she went, but it was clear that she did not return home. Kaysera planned to meet her mother the following day for a trip to North Dakota but failed to appear. Her family began to worry when Kaysera, no responding to texts, didn't answer calls, and was inactive on social media. This was unusual for her, raising concerns that something was amiss. Kaysera's aunt, Priscilla Bulltail, went to the Bighorn County Sheriff's Office to report Kaysera's niece missing. However, the office told her that she would have to wait a while before filing a report. This information proved to be false. In Montana, because Kaysera was under 21 and considered a minor, police were required to conduct an immediate search. Despite this, it wasn't until August 27 that the missing persons report was finally allowed to be filed by Kaysera's family. Kaysera's family felt that the police did not take her disappearance seriously, they failing to conduct a search and failing to distribute flyers after she went missing. When she went missing, police initially told Priscilla that Kaysera was probably just out with friends. Kaysera had previously struggled with alcohol issues, most notably when she was found unresponsive at school in 2019 due to intoxication and required emergency medical help. After her disappearance, her family waited anxiously for any information about her whereabouts. It wasn't until 5 days later, on August 29, that a jogger stumbled upon Kaysera's body near a wood pile in a backyard at the intersection of Mitchell Avenue and Rangeview Drive in the Hardin suburb, the same area where she was last seen alive. Notably, the homeowner, who had no connection to Kaysera, was away at the time of the discovery. Kaysera's family was not immediately notified that a body had been found, and instead, they learned about the information through social media rumors. As the news spread, they became extremely concerned. Priscilla attempted to visit the scene to identify the body, but was denied access and she couldn't tell if it was Kaysera or not. Local news outlets were also not alerted to the discovery of the body. Kaysera's mother and Yolanda visited the local mortuary on September 1 to identify a body, but they were initially told it was not Kaysera's. As a result, the family continued their search for her. It wasn't until 10 days later that the body was confirmed to be Kaysera's. The coroner concluded that she died on August 26 and that her death was suspicious, requiring further investigation. However, due to the advanced decomposition of her remains, the exact cause of her death could not be determined. It was also not possible to rule out asphyxiation as a cause of death. Following Kaysera's body discovery, her family urged law enforcement to investigate her death. However, the family soon encountered resistance from Terry Bullis, the county coroner and owned the local funeral home Bullis Mortuary. Terry informed Kaysera's mother, Geraldine, on September 12 that her daughter's remains would have to be cremated in order for them to be returned to the family. This went against the family's cultural beliefs and also meant that no further examinations of the body would be possible. Moreover, the family had chosen the Dahl Funeral Home to handle the funeral arrangements, but Terry forced them to use his business, Bullis Mortuary Funeral Home. To the family's dismay, Kaysera was cremated before her other relatives could even arrive in Hardin. On September 14, the family located the site where Kaysera's body was discovered with the help of nearby relatives. A few days earlier, they had tried to visit the area, but were unable to, as the scene was no longer cordoned off and there were no boundaries to where the body was discovered. They met Jason Cummings, the neighbor who had found Kaysera's body. He told them that he had suggested to the police to charge her phone so they could contact the family. Unfortunately, it seemed the police had ignored his suggestion. Jason also questioned the authorities for not sealing off the crime scene, causing evidence to be destroyed. 5 days after Kaysera went missing, on September 19, her family contacted the media to raise awareness about the case. However, they were surprised to discover that local news outlets, including the Billings Gazette, were unaware of the situation. The Gazette said it called the sheriff's office daily for updates on the cases, but they were not notified about Kaysera's case. On the same day, Kaysera's mother, Geraldine, along with Kaysera's father, Alan, met with Captain Mike Fuss from the Bighorn County Sheriff's Office. They questioned Captain Fuss about why he had not contacted them or returned their calls. Captain Mike explained that he had been preoccupied with other cases. When asked why the crime scene had not been sealed off, Captain Mike stated that according to protocol, if investigators arrived at the scene before uniformed officers, sealing off the scene was not necessary. However, if officers arrived first, the scene would be sealed off. Geraldine and Alan also inquired about Kaysera's phone, asking why law enforcement had not charged it to examine her recent communications. Captain Mike seemed surprised that the family knew about this detail and explained that the battery was dead, so they did not attempt to use it. However, Kaysera's family countered that the authorities could have charged the phone to access for recent activity. They initially claimed that not even the FBI could gain access to the phone's contents. Captain Mike reported that Kaysera had apparently died from alcohol poisoning. However, her family's offer of a $5,000 reward for any information about her death. Mike's response was unexpected and surprising, revealing a clear expression of anger. Additionally, Mike revealed that the original investigator, Jeremy Middlestead, had resigned from the case, citing that he couldn't handle it. A number of new developments occurred during this time. Kaysera's family was interviewed by law enforcement for the first time, and they also met with the Bighorn County Attorney, Jay Harris. Jay disclosed that the coroner, Terry Bullis, had a potential conflict of interest due to his roles as the owner of a funeral home business and the county medical examiner. Jay noted that under Terry's leadership, many deaths had been rapidly attributed to exposure to alcohol and natural causes. However, when the family sought answers to their questions, Jay was short-tempered and provided little clarity. On the 23rd, Kaysera's family received notice that her missing person report had not been filed and that her name was not in the missing persons database. A week later, the FBI declined to take the case, stating they required more evidence that Kaysera was murdered on the reservation. Notably, shortly before Kaysera's disappearance, she recorded a video of her 15-year-old wheelchair-bound younger brother being beaten by several police officers and shared it on social media. The incident involved deputies from the Bighorn County Sheriff's Office, resulting in disciplinary actions against the officers involved. However, one of the policemen present at the scene where Kaysera's body was found was said to be a policeman involved in the beating. This has raised suspicions that the police involved in Kaysera's death chose not to investigate, possibly to retaliate against her for her attempts to hold them responsible for her actions. 2 years after Kaysera's death, new information surfaced in August 2021. 4 witnesses came forward with accounts of the incident that led to her death. Their statements are not entirely consistent, but they generally agree on what happened. The witnesses reported that an argument took place outside a house on Rangeview Drive around 3 a.m. on August 26, 2019. Kaysera was involved in the argument with 3 other individuals, a 17-year-old girl, a 19-year-old woman, and a 23-year-old man. It was claimed that Kaysera had been at the house earlier, and one of the occupants had bought her alcohol. At the time of her death, her blood alcohol level was 0.149. The argument prompted a nearby resident to set off their car alarm, hoping the noise would cause the group to leave. And the group dispersed in different directions. Kaysera was last seen heading towards the area where her body was later found. Additional information was also revealed in the new report. Forensic analysis found no foreign DNA under Kaysera's fingernails. Furthermore, it was discovered that Kaysera had been diagnosed with asthma shortly before her disappearance. The case remains unsolved, and the authorities are still seeking information. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Jason Corbett. Jason Corbett, a 39-year-old Irish businessman, Jason has a warm, friendly personality. Born in Limerick, Ireland, Jason has a twin brother named Wayne and an older sister named Tracy. He married Margaret Fitzpatrick in 2003 when he was 27. They later welcomed 2 children, a son named Jack and a daughter named Sarah, whom they loved dearly. Jason's family seemed to be living a happy life in Ireland, but this happiness was short-lived. Tragedy struck in 2006, shortly after Sarah was born. Margaret suffered a severe asthma attack one night, waking Jason up because she was having trouble breathing. Jason immediately tried to help her by giving her medication and using her inhaler, but her condition quickly worsened. In a panic, Jason called an ambulance, but unfortunately, Margaret died on the way to the hospital. Jason Corbett was the director of a small packaging company in Ireland when he lost his wife, leaving him to raise his 2-year-old son and 3-month-old daughter alone. His friends witnessed his deep sadness and struggled to cope with the loss. A year after his wife's death, Jason was looking for a nanny and housekeeper to care for his children. This led him to Molly Martins, a 25-year-old American woman. In March 2008, Molly moved from the United States to Ireland to take up a nanny job. A friend of Jason's accompanied him to the airport to pick Molly up. The friend immediately became concerned that Molly might not be suitable for the job. Molly's youthful appearance, flashy style, and heavy makeup aroused suspicion. With her bright jacket, cowboy boots, curly hair, and heavy makeup, Molly looks more like a stage performer than a responsible nanny and maid. Molly was born and raised in Knoxville, Tennessee. After attending Clemson University for a while, she dropped out and decided to start a new life in Ireland. There, she worked as a nanny for Jason's family, taking care of his 2 children, Jack and Sarah. Molly immediately took to the children, showing them care and concern. Jason's friends noticed a significant change in him. He seemed to be coming back to life after a period of grief. As Molly and Jason's relationship deepened, love blossomed and they began dating. The family of 4 went on vacations together, which brought them closer together. They began to plan for their future as a family. 2 years later, on Valentine's Day 2010, Jason took Molly to a coffee shop, where he proposed to her with a ring. Overjoyed, Molly immediately began planning their wedding in the United States. She also convinced Jason to leave Ireland and move to the United States with her, and he agreed. In 2011, Jason sold his house, moved to the United States for work, and the family settled in Davidson County, North Carolina. The couple married in a beautiful ceremony attended by friends and family from both the United States and Ireland. After the wedding, Molly worked as a swimming instructor. But her main focus was raising Jack and Sarah. Jason, on the other hand, worked as a manager in the United States. At first, their life seemed perfect, but as time went on, their marriage began to fall apart. On August 1, 2015, Molly's parents, Tom and Sharon Martins, visited Jason's family home, where he greeted them at the entrance and helped them with their luggage. Tom had brought a gift for Jason's son, Jack, a baseball bat, but Jack was out with friends at the time. Instead, Jason, Molly, her parents, and Sarah had dinner together, eating pizza. Jack returned home late that night, but Tom decided to wait until the next morning to give him the baseball bat. After 11 p.m., the family went to bed. Molly and Jason were in the master bedroom on the first floor, while their children, Jack and Sarah, were in nearby rooms. Molly's parents were upstairs in the living room. Hours later, at 3 a.m., Molly's father, Tom, called 911 in a panic. He claimed that Jason had attacked his daughter, Molly, and in response, Tom had hit Jason with a baseball bat. Jason was now unconscious and bleeding. During the call, Tom expressed his fear that Jason's severe head injuries could be fatal and urgently requested an ambulance to their location. Tom asked the 911 operator for help, and she instructed Tom and Molly to perform CPR to try to revive Jason until paramedics arrived. When the police and ambulance arrived, they found Molly in the yard near a car, looking distressed and shocked but not crying. Inside the house, they discovered Jason Corbett's body in the master bedroom, surrounded by blood splattered on the bed, walls, and floor. Tom and Molly both had blood on their clothes. A baseball bat and a large pebble with blood on them were found near Jason, along with an overturned lamp. Jack and Sarah had been sleeping in their room during the incident. At the police station, Tom Martins, 66, a 30-year veteran of the FBI, stated that his son-in-law was mentally unstable and had been abusing his daughter. According to Tom, Jason had been drunk that night. Everyone had gone to bed, but Tom was awakened in the middle of the night by screams and loud voices coming from downstairs. He quickly got out of bed, grabbed a baseball bat, and ran down the stairs. When Tom entered the master bedroom, he found Jason strangling Molly with both hands. Tom yelled, "Let her go." In response, Jason turned to him and said, "I'm going to kill her." Tom and Molly did not deny their involvement in Jason's death but claimed they had acted in self-defense. Tom immediately felt the need to protect himself and those around him. He swung the baseball bat at Jason, but the blow seemed to have no effect. When Jason tried to drag Molly into the bathroom, Tom intervened, trying to stop him. The situation worsened when Jason pushed Tom, causing him to fall and his glasses to fly off. At this point, Tom felt his life was in danger. Jason then spotted the baseball bat on the floor and reached for it. Molly quickly responded by grabbing a rock and hitting Jason in the head, yelling, "Don't touch my dad," as she did so. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Tom picked up the baseball bat and repeatedly hit Jason until he fell to the floor. Molly, 32, provided a consistent account of events during her interview. She explained that her daughter Sarah woke up with a nightmare that night, which caused Jason to become angry and attack her. Jason allegedly began strangling Molly, threatening to kill her, and her father intervened to protect her. In order to protect her father, Molly claimed to have hit Jason on the head with a heavy rock. When asked where she got the rock, Molly replied that she had placed it on her bedside table. The rock had originally been used for drawing pictures with children as part of a gardening project, but Molly could not remember exactly how many times she had hit Jason, describing the incident as a desperate fight for her life. During her interview, Molly told police that she was still in pain from the alleged strangling incident. Photos of Molly. which showed a red mark in the middle of her neck, were compared to photos taken of her when she was arrested. However, the comparison did not reveal any red marks on her neck at the time of her arrest. Molly later admitted that the fight with her husband had actually occurred the day before the tragedy, in which Jason had grabbed her arm and neck. During questioning, she repeatedly complained of a sore throat. Both Molly and her father, Tom, testified that Jason had abused his wife, but Jason's family disputed these claims. Jason's sister, Tracy, noticed that Molly was controlling of Jason, often becoming upset if things did not go her way. She also noticed that Molly did not want to socialize with Jason's family members when they visited. Additionally, one of Molly's friends shared a disturbing claim that Molly had claimed to be friends with Jason's first wife, Margaret, until her death. However, this contradicted the family's account, as they knew Margaret had died of an asthma attack, not cancer. Despite Jason's relatives' warnings and attempts to intervene about Molly's unusual behavior, the wedding still takes place, marking the beginning of a complicated and troubled marriage. Over time, Molly's behavior began to raise concerns. Jason noticed a major change in her personality and suspected that she might have mental health issues. She was initially kind and loving, but now seemed manipulative and controlling. This worried Jason and led to more problems in their relationship. Molly began distancing herself from Jason's family by cutting her phone calls to just seconds. Before her death, Jason took steps to protect his children, Jack and Sarah. He named his sister, Tracy, as their legal guardian in case anything happened to him. Tracy knew that if Jason died, Molly would have custody of the children. After Jason's death, Tracy traveled to North Carolina to file for custody, preparing for a legal battle with Molly. During her troubled marriage to Jason, Molly consulted with an attorney to understand her rights to Jason's children in the event of a divorce. The lawyer suggested that she record their arguments and gather evidence that could be used against Jason. As a result, Molly began secretly recording their conversations. In these recordings, Molly appeared unresponsive, often ignoring Jason's repeated questions as his voice grew louder. After Jason's death, Molly confided in a close friend about her marital problems, describing Jason as controlling and abusive. She accused him of forcing her to have sex, verbally abusing her, and becoming increasingly aggressive toward her over time. Despite this, Molly never reported Jason's behavior to the police. For days after Jason's death, his 10-year-old son Jack and 8-year-old daughter Sarah were interviewed by a child welfare specialist. During the conversation, they shared their thoughts about their parents' relationship. The children described seeing their mother, Molly, being careful not to wake their father, Jason, for fear of him getting angry. Jack described a pebble on his parents' bedside table, explaining that they had brought it in because it was raining and planned to decorate it later. Both Jack and Sarah described witnessing arguments between them. According to the children, their father, Jason, often initiated these arguments, which included hitting, pushing, and swearing at his mother, Molly, over trivial matters. Jason's autopsy report found that he died of traumatic brain injury. He had suffered approximately 12 severe blows to the head with a baseball bat and a rock, all concentrated in the same area. The injuries were so severe that his scalp was torn away from his skull and his skull was fractured. A toxicology report found that Jason's blood alcohol level was slightly higher than normal at the time of his death. He also had traces of trazodone, an antidepressant commonly prescribed to treat insomnia, in his body. Jason was buried in his hometown of Limerick, Ireland, next to his first wife, Margaret. After Jason's death, his sister, Tracy, took their children, Jack and Sarah, to Ireland, which left Molly shocked and heartbroken. She tried to contact Jack and Sarah by phone and social media. Molly and Tom claimed they acted in self-defense against Jason, but the investigation into his death continues. Tracy has another theory. she thinks Molly killed Jason because he planned to leave her and take their children. Tracy believes that Jason told Molly about his decision on the night of the incident, and Molly, afraid of being alone, reacted violently. In Ireland, Jack and Sarah slowly adjust to their new lives. 9 months after their father's death, they revealed that they were forced to lie about domestic violence. They admit that Molly made up stories about their father's violent behavior, threatening to cut them off if they did not comply. The children clarify that their father had never abused Molly, contrary to what they had initially said. During the investigation, Molly's past relationship with her ex-husband Keith Megan came to light. Keith shared some revealing details about Molly's past. The two met on a dating website and quickly fell in love, moving in together just 6 weeks later. Keith described Molly as independent, fun-loving, carefree and unconventional. However, she eventually confided in him about her struggles with bipolar disorder. Keith was not overly concerned by the revelation, as Molly was on medication and appeared to be fine, apart from occasional changes in her behavior when she missed a dose. These changes did not manifest as violence or outbursts, but rather as clingy behavior during arguments, such as refusing to let Keith leave. Additionally, Molly would often spend hours in the bath, followed by periods of sitting on the cold floor and crying. Despite the difficulties they faced, Keith and Molly continued their life together and decided not to have children at that time. However, Molly soon revealed that she was pregnant, which took Keith by surprise. As the sole breadwinner, Keith was struggling financially and did not feel ready to become a father. Keith eventually proposed to Molly and she happily accepted, but due to her health problems, Molly continued to take prescription medication, including antidepressants, sometimes up to 16 pills a day. This caused Keith to worry about the effects of the medication on their unborn child. In a tragic turn of events, Molly had a dream that she had lost her baby, and the next day the hospital confirmed that the fetus had died. The loss put further strain on their relationship. Molly fell into a state of grief and was diagnosed with major depression. Her parents began to view Keith negatively, seeing him as the cause of Molly's problems. Molly planned to leave Keith in the United States to find work as a nanny for the family in Europe. In March 2008, she packed her things and moved out of the apartment they were sharing. 10 days later, she called Keith, telling him that she was in Ireland, had found a job, and was doing well. This was the last time they spoke. Years later, in October 2015, Keith received an email from a police officer in North Carolina revealing that Molly had kept her relationship with Keith and her move to Europe a secret. The email informed Keith that Molly's new husband, Jason Corbett, had been murdered. When Keith watched an interview with Molly and her father, Tom, they described Jason as a cruel person, but Keith did not believe their story. He thought their feelings seemed fake. In January 2016, Tom and Molly were charged with second-degree murder in Jason's death. At their trial in July 2017, Tom and Molly claimed they had acted in self-defense when they killed Jason. Tom said he had tried everything he could to keep himself and Molly safe. Tom admitted to beating Jason with a baseball bat, only stopping when he was sure Jason was no longer a threat. However, the prosecution argued that the severity of the attack showed a deep hatred for Jason rather than self-defense. Analysis of the bloodstains showed that some of the blows were delivered when Jason's head was between 30 and 50 centimeters above the ground, suggesting that Tom continued to attack even after Jason was no longer a threat. The presence of stains on Molly's nightgown near the area where Jason was struck suggests that she was nearby during the attack. During the trial, Lieutenant Frank Young testified about the injuries he observed on Tom and Molly on the night of the incident. He stated that Molly had self-inflicted wounds to her neck, telling her to stop while he was taking notes on her injuries. Other than some dried blood on her face and hair, Lieutenant Young found no other injuries on Molly. Tom also had no injuries, only blood on his watch and under his fingernails. Notably, his glasses were not broken. Paramedic Amanda Hackworth also took the stand and described what she found when she arrived at the scene. When she examined Jason's body, she found that his torso was cold to the touch and had patches of dried blood. This contradicts Molly's statement that they called 911 immediately after Jason became unconscious. The police investigation discovered that Jason had a life insurance policy, with Molly listed as the beneficiary. Furthermore, it was revealed that Jason had financially supported Molly's parents. A neighbor of Jason's family testified at the trial. He recalled spending an evening with Jason from 3:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m., drinking beer together. According to the neighbor, Jason seemed very relaxed at the time. The neighbor also witnessed Tom and his wife arriving at Jason's house and noted that Jason warmly welcomed them and helped them carry heavy luggage into the house. After 9 days of witness testimony, listening to arguments, and viewing haunting crime scene photos, the jury reached a verdict within 3 hours. The court found Molly Corbett and her father, Tom Martins, guilty of second-degree murder. Molly was sentenced to 20 years in prison, while her father was sentenced to 25 years in prison. As the verdict was read, Molly turned to her mother, expressing remorse. "Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Jaime Han." Jaime Han was born on October 25, 1983, in Orangeburg, South Carolina. She was a compassionate person who always put the needs of others first. She was known for her kindness and her ability to make people happy. Despite her parents' divorce and remarriage, but she grew up with her 2 brothers, Brett and Justin, and sister Ashley, and she maintaining a cheerful outlook. Jaime attended an elite private prep school known for its academic excellence. Her friends and family saw her as a talented and enthusiastic person with a promising future in politics. During a school trip to the University of North Carolina in junior high, Jaime became enamored with the campus and aspired to attend the institution. As she grew older, she joined the board of the Center of Hope, which supported troubled teenagers. She also became involved in various political campaigns, including Senator John Edwards' 2008 presidential campaign. Jaime emerged as a prominent figure within the North Carolina Democratic Party. During this campaign, she met Nation, and the two developed a strong relationship. Over time, their relationship evolved from a platonic connection to a loved one. After just 4 months of dating, the couple got engaged and eventually married on April 18, 2009. Both Jaime and Nation were successful in their careers, with Jaime running her own consulting firm, focused on political fundraising, and Nation working as a well-known online strategist for politicians and nonprofits. People who knew them described them as exceptionally kind, tender, and generous. They have been actively involved in a project protecting young families in North Carolina. Although they didn't have children yet, they plan to start a family soon. Jonathan Broyhill, 31 years old, a close friend of Nation who had been staying in the couple's home as a guest. Jaime was also familiar with Jonathan, having hired him as an accountant at her political consulting firm after he moved to North Carolina. Nation and Jaime kindly him a place to stay in their home until he could find his own accommodation. Jonathan and Nation were from the same hometown, and their friendship began in 2000 during a church trip. Although they had a 4-year age difference, they quickly formed a close bond. Like many childhood friendships, they lost touch when one of them went to college, but reconnected after graduation and became very close. In fact, Jonathan was the best man at Nation and Jaime's wedding in April 2009. The trio of Jonathan, Jaime, and Nation was incredibly close-knit. This strong bond was built on unity, with the three sharing countless moments together. They go on vacation together, have dinner together every Monday, and enjoy holidays together. However, this was a difficult time for Jonathan, who had recently been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Jaime and Nation were deeply concerned about Jonathan's well-being and had been supporting him throughout his medical journey. Jaime was overcome with emotion one day and asked Nation if they should have a child soon. They wanted their future child to have the chance to know their dear friend Jonathan. The reason behind this sudden desire was Jonathan's recent cancer diagnosis. However, Jonathan's health struggles weren't new. Over the years, he had been in and out of hospitals multiple times. At one point, he had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis during a gallbladder operation. Given his fragile health, Jaime and Nation invited Jonathan to live with them temporarily. They offered him care and support until he could recover. Jonathan spent so much time at Nation family home that some of their neighbors thought of him as a part of the family. Their deep and close relationship makes the violent incident in which all three were stabbed in their own home all the more puzzling and tragic. On a fateful Monday, Jonathan was already at the house, discussing work-related matters with Jaime in the kitchen. Nation had just arrived home and was heading upstairs to change when they were startled by Jaime's screams. Assuming the worst due to Jonathan's health issues, Nation rushed downstairs, where they met Jaime's frantic voice, crying out for help. A frantic scene unfolded as Nation rushed into the kitchen, where he found his wife severely injured and bleeding on the floor, while Jonathan stood over her, menacingly wielding a large kitchen knife. The sight was too shocking for Nation to comprehend. Jonathan, with the knife raised, advanced toward Nation. Then, Nation with one hand, Nation grabbed the knife's blade and, with the other, struck Jonathan in the face. At the same time, Nation urgently told Jaime to run for safety as he tried to subdue Jonathan. She managed to get up from the floor despite her serious injuries and ran through the side door to find help. Once Jaime was out of the house, Nation overcame his shock, pushed Jonathan aside, and followed his wife. Outside, Jaime struggled to reach the nearest neighbor's house but found no one home despite her knocking. While trying to reach the next house, exhausted and weakened by her injuries, Jaime collapsed unconscious in the neighbor's yard. Fortunately, passers-by heard the commotion and came to her aid, and a neighbor who was alerted by Jaime's screams called for an ambulance and the police. Nation frantically searched for Jaime after realizing she was gone. Following a bloody trail, he found her in a neighbor's yard, clutching her side in agony but still conscious. Kneeling beside her, Nation held her hand and tried to reassure her, making promises about their future together, including children, vacations, and future anniversaries. Overwhelmed by the thought of losing her, Nation fought back tears as he spoke. As they waited for help to arrive, a neighbor rushed over with a towel to apply pressure to Jaime's bleeding abdomen. The towel quickly became soaked in blood. Another neighbor tried to make Jaime more comfortable by propping her legs up on a bag of leaves. The wait for an ambulance felt like an eternity to the onlookers. As minutes passed, Jaime's breathing became labored, a clear sign of her critical condition. The ambulance team arrived and immediately performed first aid to save Jaime's life. Nation, who had suffered serious cuts on his hand during the struggle, also needed immediate medical attention. Both Nation and Jaime were rushed to the hospital. Upon arrival, she was immediately wheeled in for emergency surgery. Nation stitched up his own wound, but his mind was preoccupied with fear for his wife's condition. In shock, he tried multiple times to visit her in the ICU but was denied access. Sitting on a hospital bed, he anxiously waiting for information on Jaime's condition. He also was aware of the severity of her injuries, numerous stab wounds, a severed artery, and extensive liver damage. All he could do was hope and pray that she would pull through. Against all odds, Jaime survived the surgery, but unfortunately, this brief moment of hope was short-lived. She never regained consciousness and passed away 2 days later. She succumbing to the injuries she sustained. The autopsy revealed that Jaime had suffered 24 stab wounds on various parts of her body, including her face, neck, back, hands, and forearms. The most severe injuries were inflicted on her abdomen and chest, which caused significant damage to her lungs and liver. After inflicting injuries on himself, Jonathan spent 8 days in the hospital recovering. On April 30, 2013, while still recovering and wearing bandages on both wrists, he was transported on a stretcher to a Wake County magistrate's office. There, he was officially charged with first-degree murder in Jaime's case and assault with a deadly weapon against another individual, Nation. Due to the severity of the charges, he was held without bail. Then taken to Central Prison in Raleigh, which had a hospital wing where he could continue receiving medical treatment while in custody. The sudden and tragic loss of Jaime left many people deeply affected and wondering why someone she considered a best friend would commit such a horrific act, robbing her of her future. After her death, rumors spread that a large amount of money had gone missing from the election campaign managed by Jaime's team. Jonathan, who had been the team's accountant, stopped working for the company at the end of 2012, but continued to provide financial information to Jaime and help with financial reports. Some people suspected that Jaime had discovered the missing funds, which totaled over $50,000, and confronted Jonathan about this. This confrontation might have triggered his violent outburst. On the day of the incident, April 22, 2013, Jaime had invited Jonathan to their usual Monday dinner to discuss the company's financial issues. Many believe that Jaime might have questioned Jonathan about the missing funds at that time. 6 months after the tragic incident, Jaime's husband, Nation, and her family scattered her ashes near the Pulaski Memorial Baptist Church. This church was a place Jaime had voluntarily dedicated a lot of time and effort to. A week before the tragedy, the irony is that Jaime had asked the church's pastor to pray for Jonathan, who was believed to be battling cancer. Little did Jaime know that their lives would soon be shattered. Nation had to come to terms with the fact that someone he had known since childhood had taken the life of the woman he loved. For Nation, Jaime was everything, his partner, his confidant. After Jaime's passing, the trial of Jonathan Broyhill began on March 4, 2015. The district attorney told the jury that Jonathan, Jaime's financial manager, had misappropriated around $50,000 from her account by writing 39 checks to himself. Jonathan made various excuses to justify his actions, including health problems from multiple sclerosis, memory issues, a gallbladder operation, and pancreatic cancer. According to Nation, Jaime knew about the missing money but chose not to confront Jonathan about it because his health is not good. Instead, she hopes Jonathan will admit his mistake and correct it on his own. However, everything changed when Jaime got a call from a debt collector. The district attorney revealed a shocking truth. A year prior, Jonathan's first hospitalization was a result of an incident at the Jaime residence. Prior to this, Jonathan had never medical treatment, which was confirmed by his health records. He had been deceiving Jaime and Nation about his health, falsely claiming to have had a gallbladder operation, multiple sclerosis, and cancer. In reality, his medical history only showed a mental disorder. Jonathan's internet search history showed he had researched pancreatic cancer and specialists in that field, possibly to make his fabrication more believable. He had also looked up cruises that did not require a passport. Furthermore, Jonathan had booked a one-way trip to Las Vegas for April 23, but canceled it on the 22nd, just 2 hours before attacking Jaime with a knife. Jonathan confessed to the authorities that he had misused campaign funds and fabricated his medical conditions. Although Jonathan said he needed medical attention, but he would secretly leave while Nation waited in the car. Nation did not know that he was deceiving them about his true intentions. Around this time, Jonathan was struggling with depression and suicidal thoughts. He was also experiencing auditory hallucinations, hearing voices that encouraged him to harm others. He had even purchased a knife with the intention of using it to end his life in Vegas. However, When Jaime confronted him about the financial irregularities, Jonathan's emotional state escalated, and he began inflicting injuries on himself. As the situation spiraled out of control, Jaime tried to intervene, but Jonathan's anger and delirium led him to attack her impulsively. He remembered attacking Jaime but had no recollection of chasing Nation. Jonathan's lawyer acknowledged that the evidence against him was overwhelming, making it impossible to dismiss the charges. Instead, they planned to argue for temporary insanity to reduce the sentence. On March 19, 2015, the jury delivered their verdict, finding Jonathan Broyhill guilty of murdering Jaime Han and attempting to murder Nation Han, both first-degree charges. The judge sentenced Jonathan to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Sanda Dia. In December 2018, a group of college students brought their 20-year-old friend Sanda Dia to the emergency room in critical condition. He was unresponsive, extremely pale, and had a body temperature of 27 degrees Celsius. This was unusual because Sanda was a healthy and active young man with no previous health problems. The medical team ran several tests, which revealed that Sanda had hypernatremia, a life-threatening condition caused by too much sodium in the body. Normally, an adult consumes about 2 grams of sodium per day, but Sanda's body contains 160 grams, equivalent to about 2 months' worth of sodium. The medical team asked Sanda's friends what had happened, but they simply shrugged, avoided eye contact and pretended not to know about Sanda's condition. It was clear that something was wrong. Despite the efforts of medical professionals to save him, Sanda, 20, died of multiple organ failure. The autopsy revealed the initial findings. The pathologist examined Sanda's stomach to understand the cause of the seemingly healthy college student's sudden death. To the doctor's surprise and shock, he discovered that he had not eaten or drank any food or water for the past 2 days. Instead, his stomach contained foreign objects such as goldfish from an aquarium, the head of a rat, and the entire head of an eel. This indicated that Sanda had suffered horrific experiences before his death. The case attracted a lot of media attention, quickly becoming an international topic of discussion. Talks broke out about universities covering up shocking student misconduct and the lack of responsibility of the children of wealthy families. A student association called Reusgum was closely monitored. Reusgum, founded more than 70 years ago, is symbolized by a Flemish lion. The secret society has about 30 active male members, mostly law, engineering, and business students from prestigious families. Reusgum is one of the most prestigious and sought-after groups at the prestigious Catholic University of Leuven in Belgium, with only 2 or 3 new members admitted each year. The secret society is surrounded by rumors, which makes it all the more mysterious and mysterious. It is like an elite group of students with a lot of power and influence on campus. The Reusgum Student Secret Society has begun planning its annual initiation ceremony for new members. The ceremony includes a unique and daring menu, starting with appetizers such as roasted grasshoppers and cockroaches, followed by a main course of rats and raw fish. Dessert is a mix of coffee and a banned substance. A disturbing photo of a Reusgum fraternity's initiation ceremony has gone viral. The photo shows the group's leaders dressed in worn clothes, while 4 new members are kneeling. 2 of the new members are pictured with a gun pointed at their heads, a pistol, and a rifle. The photo raises many questions. What other types of rituals does this secretive group conduct? What exactly are the events that take place inside the fraternity? Considering the backgrounds of many of its members, parents, politicians, lawyers, prominent doctors, and business leaders, what would they do to protect their children if something truly happened seriously? Sanda never had any aspirations of joining the Reusgum fraternity. Instead, he was a young man born in Belgium to a Senegalese father who sought asylum in the country a few years before he was born. As an immigrant, Sanda's father worked hard to ensure his two sons could live a good life. He knew that because of the color of his skin, his children would have to work twice as hard to gain the same respect and career opportunities as native Belgians. Sanda's father, Dia, worked long hours at a factory, spent many nights mastering the local language, and slept or stayed up all night to help his son study. His only desire was for his sons to succeed in life. From a young age, Sanda understood the importance of working towards his goals. He realized that success will not come easily and required perseverance and hard work. As he grew up, Sanda had a close friend named Ferry, who lived nearby. The two shared interests such as cycling, comics, and dreams of going to college, finding a good job, saving money, and eventually moving to Japan. They even promised to be lifelong friends and visit Japan together one day. However, fate had other plans for Sanda, and he will never have the chance to visit his dreamland. As a teenager, Sanda had many friends. He had an innate ability to excel in various activities, such as solving complex math problems and playing soccer, which surprised his friends. Despite his special talents, Sanda was loved by everyone for his easygoing and charming personality. He was sociable and easy to get along with, which made it easy for him to make friends. After completing high school, Sanda made his family proud by becoming the first person to attend a prestigious university, the University of Leuven. His father was extremely happy with this achievement, which exceeded his dreams. Although the university was close to home, Sanda chose to live in a dormitory. He pursued civil engineering and was determined to get a master's degree in the field. Sanda's maturity and ambition drove him to make his father proud. His ultimate goal was to graduate, secure a high-paying job, and allow his father to retire, repaying the sacrifices he had made for his children's future. By 2018, Sanda was in his third year of a 5-year program and was already thinking about his career after graduation. In order to achieve his goal of securing a high-paying job to support his family and pay the bills, he stayed away from parties and focused on finding a job. Realizing that his skin color could be a hindrance in a predominantly European industry, and with his high academic achievements, communication skills, and hard work, he realized that building relationships was important. This realization leads him to consider joining the Reusgum, a group that has important connections and is essential to his career. Joining the Reusgum seems to be a strategic decision. Many of its members come from prominent families, which makes Sanda's decision to apply a surprise to his friends, except for his brother, who understands the potential career advantages of the organization. However, his childhood friend Ferry has reservations about these groups and even tries to dissuade Sanda from joining, seeing it as a potentially dangerous move. If Ferry had known the tragic outcome that would befall Sanda, he would never have stopped trying to stop him. Sanda's decision to join Reusgum was not an impulsive one, he considered it carefully. With 2 years left until the end of his studies in 2018, he weighed the pros and cons before making his final decision. Sanda was then one of 10 students who successfully passed Reusgum's rigorous selection process. Of these 10, only 3, including Sanda, advanced to the final selection stage. In the first stage, Reusgum members screen out candidates who do not match their interests, personalities, or communication styles. Once the final 3 are narrowed down, the real challenge begins. We'll spend 2 months rigorously evaluating the 3 selected, culminating in a 2 to 3 day selection ceremony. During this intense evaluation process, the recruits are subjected to constant, relentless humiliation and complete dependence on the members of the Reusgum society. Sanda learns about the brutal initiation rituals of the society, but he is willing to go through with it for the promise of a better future. Like the other 2 candidates, Sanda understands that the process will be difficult and push them to their limits. However, no one anticipates risking their lives in such situations. Sanda's school friend, who belongs to another society, has his own views on the Ryuzgam initiation activities. He sees it as a challenging test of endurance, brotherhood, and self-control. Although he admits that it is difficult, he believes that it is a necessary experience and will ultimately be rewarding. However, Sanda has a very horrifying experience. He is forced to drink too much alcohol. What was even more disturbing was that he was forced to drink the urine of existing members of the society. Sanda and the other newcomers were constantly insulted. Sanda had the worst of it. He was ridiculed for the color of his skin, which made his experience even more unpleasant. In October 2018, the society held a large event at the Student Union building. New members, including Sanda, were forced to kneel and take turns drinking large amounts of strong alcohol. Despite this, the newcomers were still forced to clean up the place. They stumbled across the floor, trying to clean up their own and others' vomit. The experience was traumatic and humiliating for Sanda and the other new members. That night, the 3 new members were ordered to clean up, but the Ryuzgam brothers had other plans. They decide that only the dark-skinned man, Sanda, will be cleaned, citing historical precedent where dark-skinned men served white men. Sanda feels powerless to protest, but he is determined to overcome it. Knowing that this situation will eventually end, Sanda worked hard to be accepted into the society, but at the age of 20, he was still quite naive. Despite the pain he had gone through, Sanda continued to attend the society's meetings. Sanda loved his father, who had sacrificed a lot for his education, and Sanda was determined to make him proud. Sanda hoped that the humiliation would end once he passed the final hurdle. The Ryuzgam Society, which has a history of over 70 years, had only 2 members of African descent. In 2015, a dark-skinned student was inducted, and Sanda was about to become the second person to undergo the final initiation ceremony, also known as baptism. On December 4, 2018, the initiation process for new members began at 4 p.m. In the first challenge, 3 candidates, including Sanda, wear long, flowing white robes and walk into town with bouquets of flowers. Their goal is to sell as many flowers as possible by the end of the challenge. The person who sells the fewest flowers is punished. These punishments include drinking yogurt and other unpleasant substances. Sanda ends up in last place, selling 30 fewer roses than his competitors. This leads to his punishment, where he is forced to drink a significant amount of alcohol, affecting his ability to speak. The initiation moves into the second phase. The new members, now kneeling, are asked simple questions. However, by 7 p.m., the members of the association have become less tolerant of Sanda's inability to answer these questions clearly. Unsurprisingly, he is defeated by the other competitors and faces further punishments. His punishment was to drink 1.5 bottles of gin. His body, not used to the large amount of alcohol, began to react painfully. His stomach was filled with the alcohol he had drunk. Sanda's health quickly deteriorated, leaving him unable to walk, talk, or move, as he faced severe dehydration and passed out repeatedly. Surprisingly, this incident took place in a public place, right on the sidewalk in front of a cafe in the city square. However, no passers-by intervened or called the police for help. At 9 p.m., the third challenge, called Endure the Night, began. The student council took the new recruits to their dormitory, where the 18 student council brothers continued to torture them relentlessly. This time, the participants were required to drink as much beer as possible. By the end of the ordeal, all 3 participants were unconscious, although they were still breathing. However, this did not stop the continued abuse. According to the order's custom, when someone faints, they are urinated on by the order's members. A video was recorded of these actions at 11:40 p.m., but the perpetrators attempted to delete the footage. When the first day of the event ended, the new members were taken to their quarters and violently thrown onto their beds. The water supply was cut off as a prank. The initiates' belongings were vandalized with ketchup and chocolate, and they were locked up. This meant that if any of them woke up, they would not have access to water to relieve their dehydration, having consumed a potentially fatal amount of alcohol. This was just the beginning of a week-long initiation ceremony at one of the country's most esteemed universities. But the most traumatic experiences were yet to come. The next day, December 5, 2018, at around 10:30 a.m., the members of the order were ready to begin the final stage of the initiation ceremony. They woke up the 3 new members, loaded them into a car, and drove out of the city to a remote village about an hour away. One of the members of the order had a small, isolated house surrounded by dense forests, ideal for keeping their activities secret. Along the way, they stopped several times to purchase the necessary items for the ceremony. They visited a pet store to buy items such as aquarium fish, eels, live rodents, as well as bird and dog food from a pet store. They then stopped at a supermarket to buy various products, including fish sauce. However, this sauce is high in sodium and is not usually consumed in large quantities. They also bought duck eggs, sardines, clams, shrimp paste, mussels, and other seafood products. During their stop, a professor approached the group of students and noticed that one of the students was in need of help. She expressed her concerns to the society members and even suggested calling the police. However, the society members, quickly convincing her that the student was simply drunk and in shock, stated that the initiation ceremony was over and that they would help him recover by giving him a cold shower. This seemed to allay the professor's concerns. The group then went to a cabin in the woods. The police have reconstructed the details of what happened next through the recovered deleted footage and some evidence. The truth about the events that took place in that forest is still unclear. For several hours, the 3 beginners had to dig a large hole, which they were then placed in. Other members of the student union surrounded the hole. They filled it with cold water and live eels. In Belgium, the average temperature in December is around +3 to +7 degrees Celsius. When the newcomers start shivering from the cold, the members of the society urinate on them from above, a strange act that is said to warm them. At this point, Sanda was dehydrated and still drunk from the night before. Even if he wanted to get up and leave, he couldn't. Normally, if a new initiate wanted to stop, he would just ring a bell placed at the edge of the pit, but this time the bell had been removed, leaving Sanda with no way to indicate that he wanted to stop. His physical condition, unable to stand or speak, left him helpless. The 3 new members, exhausted and drunk, were forced to sit in ice water and endure the urination and defecation of the members of the order. They were then forced to bite the heads of rats and eels that lived in the water and drink fish oil. After 6 hours of enduring these brutal conditions, Sanda's body began to weaken and he passed out. Finally, he was taken out of the water, dressed in dry clothes, and placed next to the fire. As he curled up on the ground for 2 hours, the initiation ritual continued around him. As Sanda's health deteriorated, instead of seeking immediate medical help, the fraternity members spent their time taking pictures and recording Sanda's painful images and sounds. Sanda's body was now reacting violently to the excessive sodium intake, leading to high blood pressure and a nosebleed. Sanda then passed out. Time passed. It wasn't until 8:57 p.m. that one of the fraternity members decided to call an ambulance. The students then drove Sanda to the hospital, but instead of placing him safely in the back seat, they deliberately placed him in the trunk to avoid dirtying the car's interior. Upon arriving at the hospital, the association members deliberately withheld important information from the medical team regarding Sanda's diet and recent alcohol consumption. After dropping him off and handing him over to the medical team, the group of students left immediately, saying that the ceremony would resume as soon as Sanda was discharged from the hospital. A decision that did not take much care of Sanda's health. While medical professionals were investigating the cause of his condition, Sanda's internal organs began to fail. He was eventually transferred to Antwerp University Hospital for more advanced care and better facilities. There, he fell into a coma, and Sanda's heart stopped, and the 20-year-old tragically passed away. The cause of death was determined to be high levels of sodium in his body due to his excessive consumption of fish sauce during the ritual. This prompted the hospital to notify the police, who immediately opened an investigation into the circumstances surrounding Sanda's death. As news of Sanda's death spread, 2 other ritual participants were rushed to the hospital at 10:40 p.m. after their conditions worsened. Their parents also rushed to the hospital upon learning of their child's serious condition. Meanwhile, the members of the cult attempted to cover their tracks by destroying all evidence. They filled in a trench used in the ritual, cleaned up the room where they used ketchup and chocolate, turned on the water supply, and deleted incriminating messages, photos, and videos from their phones. However, when the police arrived, they were still able to recover the deleted data from the cult members' mobile devices. The investigation into Sanda's death has been difficult, despite the considerable amount of evidence that has been collected. The members involved belonged to powerful families whose parents quickly sought legal representation. Although the evidence linking the 18 members of the student body to Sanda's death grew stronger, the investigation dragged on and was repeatedly thwarted by powerful parents. All 18 students deleted their social media profiles and limited their communication, speaking only through their lawyers. Following Sanda's tragic death, the Ryuzgam student body was eventually dissolved, and the university disciplined the students involved, requiring them to complete 30 hours of community service. Despite the severity of the incident, none of the students were expelled. The group of 18 completed their studies without any significant consequences. A group of teachers protested the lenient punishment, writing an open letter in support of harsher punishments for the group, but no additional measures were taken against the students. The legal process of the case was completed in July 2020. However, the lawyers for the Ryuzgam members tried to reframe the case as a tragic accident caused by Sanda's poor health. It was not until May 26, 2023, that the court finally issued its verdict. The court found 18 Ryuzgam students guilty of manslaughter and mistreatment. Each member was fined €400, ordered to perform community service, and ordered to compensate the victim's family about €30,000. The court decided not to reveal the identities of the students responsible in order to protect their future. The relatively light sentences caused widespread outrage, leading to protests in several cities. However, while these protests took place, the outcome remained the same. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Zoe Sarnaki. Zoe Sarnaki was born on March 25, 1991, in Portland, Maine, a city in the northwest of the United States. She was raised in a loving family consisting of her parents, John and Linda Sarnaki, her brother Gregory, and 2 half-sisters, with whom she still maintains a close relationship. Zoe's father, John, worked as a construction worker and provided well for the family. As a result, Zoe was exposed to a variety of creative activities from a young age, which led to her strong interest in art. Her family also loved animals and had 5 cats at home. As Zoe grew older, she became increasingly curious and developed a strong desire to travel and experience different cultures. She also adopted a vegan lifestyle, choosing to consume only plant-based foods and avoiding animal products. Zoe was raised in an ecologically conscious culture that prioritized animal welfare, environmental conservation, and healthy living. This culture played a major role in shaping her personality. By the time she started high school in 2005, Zoe had already built up a large group of friends who considered her to be cheerful, enthusiastic, and friendly. However, things changed in 2008 when Zoe made a shocking decision on her 17th birthday. She decided to drop out of school. Her friends and family were surprised by the decision, and her parents were particularly unhappy with her choice. Despite this sudden change, Zoe's former classmates remember her fondly, describing her as a kind and loving person. A few months after leaving school, Zoe found a job at a local bakery and cafe called Bagel Works, marking the beginning of a new chapter in her life. On March 25, 2009, Zoe's 18th birthday, she was looking forward to getting a tattoo on one of her arms. Inspired by the works of Austrian artist Gustav Klimt, she had a clear idea of the design she wanted. Zoe went to a tattoo parlor in the Old Port area. There, she met 27-year-old tattoo artist Chad Gurney. They quickly formed a bond, and after just a few days of meeting, Zoe agreed to start a romantic relationship with him. Notably, their 9-year age gap did not stop her from pursuing a relationship with Chad. Chad had a unique background. Born and raised in Maine, he attended Wells High School, where he was known as the goalie for lacrosse, a competitive sport played between two teams using a small rubber ball and a long-handled stick. After graduating from high school, Chad moved to Lynchburg, Virginia, to attend Liberty University, an institution known for its ties to the famous evangelical pastor Jerry Falwell. Chad has many tattoos on his body, most of which depict aliens. One design stands out, a gray alligator tattoo. In the context of tattoos, alien designs can mean two things. One is that the person believes in the existence of beings from other planets, and two is that it reflects the personality of the person wearing the tattoo, who is trying to say that they do not fit into this world. That they are different from others and that they are unique. As for the reptile tattoo, it is said to symbolize danger and hostility, a predator to be avoided. Before moving to Portland in 2005, Chad had a difficult time recovering from a near-fatal car accident in Alabama that had occurred 4 years earlier. On a trip to a lacrosse game, a local van carrying players and coaches was hit from behind by a car and pushed into the oncoming lane, where it collided with a large truck. The impact threw Chad from the van and he nearly lost his leg. He has undergone approximately 20 surgeries due to severe head injuries. Chad underwent a psychiatric evaluation following his accident, which revealed that he had cognitive impairments. These impairments affected his speech, memory, and mathematical reasoning. After the accident, Chad received a large settlement from a lawsuit, allowing him to become financially independent. Years later, in 2007, Chad sought treatment for anxiety and depression. He was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and organic personality disorder. In 2009, Chad traveled to Hawaii alone, where he met Zoe. Chad and Zoe began dating and decided to have an open relationship, which meant they were free to see other people. After starting their relationship, Chad continued to travel. In May 2009, he took a weekend trip to Vancouver, a city in Canada. When Chad returned to Portland, Zoe confessed to him remorsefully that while he was away, she had had an affair with another man and had sex with him. At first, Chad did not seem to mind the affair, as they had previously agreed to maintain an open relationship. However, after this confession, Chad changed and began to insist that Zoe quit her job and go with him to Thailand. Zoe refused him, not knowing the devastating consequences that would follow. On May 25, 2009, Zoe came to Chad's apartment and took a nap because she was tired. While she was sleeping, Chad violently attacked her. He grabbed her by the neck, hit her in the head, and strangled her until she died. After Zoe died, Chad continued to commit crimes, including having sex with her body and then decapitating her. After committing the crime, Chad showered, dressed and drove to a nearby gas station to fill up the tank, showing a disturbing calmness after committing such a heinous act. Chad returned to his apartment, where he poured petrol over Zoe, creating a trail of fuel leading to the front door. He then set it on fire. Before the fire spread throughout the apartment, Chad quickly grabbed a backpack filled with items for his trip to Thailand, a laptop and a handgun. After the apartment was completely engulfed, Chad went to an ATM to withdraw cash and then checked into the Old Orchard Beach Motel, where he relaxed in the hot tub. A 911 call was made and emergency services were alerted to the fire at Chad's apartment. Police arrived quickly on the scene and extinguished the fire. Upon entering the building, they discovered a horrific scene. Inside the charred ruins of the apartment was a badly burned body surrounded by crosses and other religious objects. A neighbor called Chad to report that his house was on fire. Chad replied that he was out of town, headed to his hometown of Lewiston, and quickly ended the call. 2 days later, on May 26, Chad spoke to his best friend and confessed to killing Zoe, calmly explaining the events that led up to it. He appeared rational, claiming that he was exhausted from the pain and had lost control of himself. While driving through the streets of Portland, Chad carelessly ran a red light and was pulled over by a city police officer. During the stop, Chad claimed that a previous accident in 2005 had left him with mental health issues, and he asked his friend to explain this to the police over the phone. After a conversation with his friend and the police, Chad voluntarily went to the police station and confessed to Zoe's murder. The police then seized his belongings. A forensic examination of Chad's computer discovered a video of the gruesome scene on his hard drive, titled "Woman Half Decapitated Over Suspicion of Adultery." At least if she cheated, she wouldn't do it again. This incriminating evidence was later presented to the court. On Wednesday, May 27, Zoe's high school held a moment of silence during class to honor her. Before lunch, teachers and students were informed of the tragic incident. Later that day, Christine Koo, Zoe's half-sister, issued a statement to local media on behalf of the family. She stressed that this was no ordinary murder, as the perpetrator, Chad, had committed many heinous acts. Christine reported that the police had informed her of the shocking events surrounding Zoe's murder. According to them, Chad had brutally attacked Zoe in a fit of rage, sexually assaulted her, and then set her body on fire. He then calmly went to a motel and got into a hot tub. A week after Zoe's tragic death, on June 2, 2009, a vigil was held in front of Chad's former apartment building. The vigil served as a moment of comfort for Zoe's loved ones and friends. Many strangers, shocked and outraged by the brutal crime, attended. It is estimated that more than 150 people attended the vigil and memorial service for Zoe. Candles and flowers were placed on the steps of the building where her life was tragically ended in memory of Zoe. Zoe's father, John, and her half-sister, Courtney, attended the vigil and were deeply moved by the outpouring of support from so many people. During the investigation, police interviewed Chad's friends and acquaintances, who said he was on a spiritual quest and had plans to travel to Thailand to study Eastern religions. His apartment was said to be decorated with many spiritual artifacts and symbols. Chad's personality seemed to be a mixture of contradictions. On the one hand, he was known to be kind and charming, often giving small gifts to those around him. He also expressed a desire to use the money he received from an accident to help humanity. However, Chad also had a harder side, with tattoos on his arms and a reputation for provocative and confrontational behavior. Those who knew Chad noted that his behavior often pushed people away. Robert Collins, a 24-year-old chef who knew Chad, recalled that people would often ignore him and turn away when Chad came to parties. Chad also confided to Robert that the only thing he truly sympathized with was pain, which was further emphasized by the word pain tattooed on his knuckles. Police and prosecutors have made great efforts to gather every piece of information about this brutal crime. Steve Weir, who rented an apartment from Chad in 2006, was also questioned. He mentioned religious paintings and artifacts in Chad's apartment and said Chad told him he was interested in theology but did not practice it. Watson Atkinson, a tattoo parlor owner in Portland, recalled a conversation with Chad in which Chad shared his plans to use his accident compensation to find direction in his life. However, Watson's impression of Chad was disturbing because Chad seemed to focus on teenage girls, which worried him so much that he forbade his 16-year-old daughter from communicating with Chad, and also repeatedly warned Zoe to stay away from him. An investigation into Chad's background revealed his medical history and mental health diagnoses, but subsequent evaluations by multiple psychologists during his incarceration found no evidence of delusions or hallucinations. In conversations with professionals, Chad expressed strong emotions related to his perception of Zoe's infidelity, which he claimed had frustrated him. According to court documents, he claimed that he was fed up with all his girlfriend's infidelity. He began thinking about killing Zoe when she confessed her infidelity to him. As the trial began, a 127-minute tape of the police interview was played. The tape was recorded 12 hours after the crime and featured Chad speaking to Denham police. In the recording, Chad described his relationship with Zoe as extremely close, with Zoe sometimes staying at his apartment for up to a week. He denied any history of fighting between them and believed they were destined for each other. Chad also admitted to taking Zoe's life, describing her as the most beautiful girl he had ever met and feeling he had a responsibility to tell the truth about what had happened. During his conversation with the police, Chad remained calm and apologized frequently, breaking down in tears several times. He recounted the events of May 25, 2009, saying that Zoe was napping. Chad said that he approached her and began to strangle her, causing Zoe to defend herself and scream for him to stop. According to Chad, when Zoe resisted, he hit her in the head and continued to strangle her until she lost consciousness and stopped breathing. He then detailed the next terrifying actions he performed on her body. Chad revised his testimony, saying that he used 3 knives instead of a samurai sword. He described how he placed a cross between his legs and recounted his actions while Zoe's body burned in the apartment. Chad called himself a terrible person. When questioned about the beheading, Chad claimed that he was trying to turn Zoe's death into a ritual of forgiveness. Chad said he felt haunted on the day of the murder and that everything in his life seemed to have gone dark. He described himself as a primitive person, acting on instinct for hours, which led him to commit the heinous act. The recording of the interrogation, which became key evidence in Cumberland County Superior Court, was heard in its entirety by Judge Roland Cole during the first trial. It was revealed that Chad faced serious consequences, at least 25 years in prison, or possibly life in prison. However, if his mental disorder was recognized, he could be sent to a psychiatric facility in Austin. During the 2011 trial, it was determined that Chad had strangled the victim in a fit of rage. The question remains whether Chad would agree to this testimony, since he had waived his right to a jury trial. Prosecutors argued that Chad, a former Liberty University student and lacrosse champion, was fully aware of his actions. To support this claim, they presented testimony from a psychiatrist and a psychologist, both of whom agreed that Chad understood the gravity of his actions and decided to violently kill his girlfriend. Chad's defense team continued to emphasize his mental health struggles, arguing that he was out of control. On January 11, 2012, Chad's attorneys filed a motion with the Supreme Court to exclude from the case evidence found on Chad's personal computer at the time of his arrest. This evidence included a gruesome video in which he demonstrated how to decapitate an unfaithful woman. The defense argued that the video was inadmissible as evidence. Ultimately, nearly 3 years after the crime, Chad Gurney, then 30, was sentenced to 50 years in prison for the murder of Zoe Sarnaki and an additional 25 years for arson. The judge ruled that the sentences would run consecutively. Chad's lawyers challenged the sentence, but their appeal was rejected. Zoe's family members were disappointed that Chad did not receive a life sentence. During sentencing, the presiding judge said that Chad had a distorted view of the world, but the court's main concern was whether the defendant knew that his actions were wrong. Chad's lawyer, Sarah Churchill, presented her case to the Supreme Court, claiming that Chad's concussion and other injuries from the 2005 accident had left her client in a state of confusion and delusion. She argued that the judge erred in finding Chad guilty, particularly that the search warrant should not have included his smartphone, laptop, and social media pages. Sarah Churchill argued that the court should have focused more on evidence of Chad's psychosis and unstable mental state at the time of the crime, rather than evidence found on his digital devices. The Deputy Attorney General told the court that Chad was accused of killing Zoe as an act of revenge for having an affair with another man. The Deputy Attorney General explained that a video appeared to show Chad sexually assaulting Zoe as punishment for an infidelity that he considered a betrayal. The Deputy Attorney General clarified that the prosecution did not use any information from social media to build its case against Chad. He argued that the evidence convincingly demonstrated that the defendant was fully aware of his actions at the time of the crime. After the verdict was announced, Kathy Kozev, Zoe's aunt, shared with reporters that throughout the trial she felt extremely distressed as she witnessed Chad's sight and voice, taking her back to the traumatic final moments of her niece's life.